Chapter 9:14. To the Buddhists, those who walked the demonic path were all evil demons and murderers who deserved to die. But if they had to choose an existence that they hated the most, the moon-worshipping sect wouldn't be on the list, nor would the lurking devil sect. Even Chu Xiu wouldn't be on the list. The first would definitely be the sixth demon sect. The sixth demon sect's techniques were innately the bane of the Buddhists, stirring up the mental states of the Buddhists, causing inner demons to form in them, ruining their cultivation. It could be said that the Buddhists hated them to the core. They could tolerate working with Chu Xiu, but they couldn't tolerate working with the sixth demon sect. Seeing that the two of them were about to make a move, Wuxia hurriedly said, "The two of you, if you want to enter the great black heavenly demon sect, you can't do it without me. Perhaps you don't know this, but the sixth demon sect and the great black heavenly demon sect, or more accurately, the true source of the great black heavenly demon sect's legacy, are closely related. Divine General Lin of the Elysium, you only want the things of the great black heavenly demon sect, but you definitely don't know much about the situation, right? Also, Chu Xiu, although your triple city extinguishing arrow was obtained by the sect master from the great black heavenly demon sect, the lurking devil sect shouldn't have a detailed description of this sect. Of course, it's the same for the Buddhists. Although the Buddhists have various connections with the great black heavenly demon sect, the description should also be very vague." Xiao Moha frowned. "In that case, the sixth demon sect has a deep connection with the great black heavenly demon sect, and there should be detailed records of it?" Wuxia said calmly, "To be precise, the sixth demon sect's legacy and the great black heavenly demon sect's legacy are almost the same. 500 years ago, when the great black heavenly demon sect first appeared, the sixth demon sect wanted to find a chance to investigate their background. However, Patriarch Dugu's actions were too fast, so fast that the sixth demon sect didn't even have time to react before the great black sky demon sect was annihilated. However, what I can be sure of is that our cultivation techniques are interlinked. With me around, it will be much smoother for all of you when you enter the black sky demon cult." Xiao Mo thought for a moment and said, "In Ku, lead the way." Although Desolate Mo did not directly agree to let Wuxia join them, his attitude was a tacit agreement. When the leader of the barbarians saw that he had a chance to help the guru of the Subodhi monastery, he was so excited that he could not control himself. This scene made Chu Xiu a little curious. God knows what those guys from the Subodhi monastery did in the southern barbaric land to be able to brainwash these southern barbaric natives to this extent. There were too many primitive forests in the southern barbaric land. Even a monk like Xiao Mo from the Subodhi monastery might not be able to find the direction. Only these southern barbaric natives who had lived here for a long time were familiar with it. On the way, Chu Xiu asked Wuxia, "Master Yi, how much do you know about the great black heavenly demon cult?" Wuxia frowned and said, "My surname is not Yi. Forget it, you can call me whatever you want." Wuxia was a little gloomy. He was not from the Central Plains, so it was very troublesome to explain these things. Chu Xiu could call him whatever he wanted. Actually, speaking of the great black heavenly demon cult, the connection should be traced back to the ancient times. It's not just the sixth demon sect. Nearly half of the forces in the pugilistic world can be traced back to the ancient times. For example, the Great Light Temple and the Subodhi Monastery were recorded in some ancient books in the ancient times. It was either the survivors of the ancient times or the descendants accidentally discovered the orthodoxy, so they rebuilt the sect. For example, the sixth demon sect was like this. My ancestors accidentally discovered a relic, so that the sixth demon sect was formed. Among the three major Taoist sects, the Celestial Master Mansion and the True Martial sect should be branches of the Taoist sects in the ancient times. As for the Chunyang Dao sect, it had nothing to do with the ancient Taoist sections. It was completely created by ancestor Lu alone. The origins of these sects, whether it was the ancient times or the present, were actually very clear. Only the great black heavenly demon cult seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. Although the great black heavenly demon cult was instantly destroyed by Patriarch Dugu, think about it. The one who did it was Patriarch Dugu. With the power and influence of the Kunlun devil cult at that time, the outcome would probably be the same no matter who it was. Moreover, Patriarch Dugu even took the Triple City Annihilation Arrow from the Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult. This further proves that the other party's strength is not ordinary. Ordinary martial arts are not qualified to be valued by Patriarch Dugu. Everyone think about it. What is the biggest doubt in this? The biggest doubt is the existence of the Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult itself. It should be said that the other party should not exist at all. None of the people present were stupid. Apart from the barbarian race's Patriarch Jianghu, everyone immediately understood what Wuxia meant. The Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult was a sect without a history. Ordinary sects, regardless of whether they were created by ancient survivors or inherited by later generations, or even if they had nothing to do with ancient inheritances, they still had an inheritance. In the end, the Mahakala Heavenly Demon Cult suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Moreover, they were very strong. They were so strong that Dugu Weiwa had to personally take action. There were very few people in the pugilistic world who could do that. Of course, it was also possible that someone had accidentally discovered the legacy of the Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult and had been hiding in the mountains and forests of the South Barbarian land to cultivate. But the problem was, how could such a strong sect hide in a place for so long without being discovered? This was completely illogical. Chu Xiao asked Lu Jianghu, who was in the Blood Soul Pearl, "Didn't you guys feel that there was something wrong with the Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult?" Lu Jianghu asked, "Do you think this question is important to the cult master? No matter how strange it is just a force that can be destroyed easily. Why would he spend so much effort to study it?" Chu Xiao was stunned for a moment. That really made sense. Now that they had received news of the Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult, they had joined forces to explore with their own goals. They were even nervous, but to Dugu Weiwei, this was really not a big deal. At this moment, Jianghu pointed to a gloomy valley in front of them and said with a terrified expression, "Exalted Master, the place you mentioned is in the valley. Many clansmen and people from other tribes have entered it when they were hunting, but none of them came out alive. Even if some of them came out alive, their souls were devoured by the evil gods and their bodies turned into ashes." Xiao Moha nodded. Looking at the aura, it should be in this place. The natives of the South Barbarian land always treated things they didn't understand as existences like gods and ghosts. There were evil gods here and there, and the Subodhi monastery didn't care. He didn't expect that there would be such a strange place in the depths of the mountains of the South Barbarian land. At this moment, there was a commotion from the valley, and there were faint sounds of people cursing. Everyone present looked at each other and frowned. Chu Xiao and Lin Tonglong had the map, so they came fast enough. It was just that they were delayed because of the changes in the terrain. Xiao Moha and the others rushed over after receiving the news, but because they were close, they had the advantage. But how could someone run ahead of them? "Jianghu, you go back first." After sending the barbarian patriarch away, everyone immediately walked towards the valley. However, they saw that in front of the valley, Li Jiaodi was holding a whip and scolding a few natives of the South Barbarian land into the valley. The natives of the South Barbarian land cried and shouted, and someone even shouted in choppy Central Plains Chinese, "You can't go in. That is the residence of the evil gods. If you go in, your soul will be devoured by the evil gods. If you kill us, our souls will still go to the Western Paradise, but if our souls are devoured by the evil gods, we will never be able to reincarnate." "What evil gods?" "Nonsense. Whoever goes in and finds the scarlet fire blood lotus for me, I will make him the patriarch. Whoever dares to resist, I will make him unable to reincarnate now." Hearing this, everyone understood that Li Jiaodi appeared here not because she knew the news in advance, but because she came here to pick herbs and came to this place by chance. Among the rogue cultivators, some might be very strong, but they didn't have a big force to rely on, so they still had to rely on themselves to collect all kinds of spiritual herbs and resources. Although the climate in the South Barbarian land was harsh, there were many rare spiritual herbs because there were few people here all year round. Although Xiao Mo was blind, his perception was still able to detect everything. Sensing this scene, he couldn't help but shout angrily, "Li Jiaodi! It's fine that you came to the South Barbarian land to pick herbs, but you dare to force these innocent people to explore the way. Do you really think my Subodhi monastery is just for show? There were no other Jianghu forces in the entire southern barbarian land, only Subodhi monastery. The local South barbarian natives worshipped Subodhi monastery, so they were naturally protected by Subodhi monastery. But Li Jiaodi openly enslaved these South barbarian natives here, so it was no wonder that Xiao Moha was angry. At this time, when Li Jiaodi saw Chu Xiu and the others, she was also stunned, but then she reacted, and her eyes revealed a glimmer of light. Are you looking for the ruins of the big black demon cult? Looks like it's here. The news of Chu Xiu's battle with Elysium Divine General Lin Songlong to save the Mo family had already spread. Now that they were here, Li Jiaodi could easily guess their purpose. Previously, Lin Songlong wanted to silence them, but that was simply unreliable. How could he silence tens of thousands of people? The Mo family and the Xiahou clan were not monolithic, and both of them would keep it strictly confidential. Chu Xiu had already expected that there would be a lot of people competing with them in this line of work. Now that there were only a few people, it was still within his expectations. So what if it's here? Xiao Moha frowned. Of course, count me in. Everyone who sees the treasure has a share, and this place was discovered by me. Originally, Li Jiaodi only heard about this matter, and she didn't want to get involved. The South barbarian land was so big, where could she find people? But now these people appeared in front of her. This opportunity was given to her by God, so she had no reason to refuse. Chapter 9:15. Xiao Mo did not want Li Jiaodi to join them. Right now, there were already enough people in their group. Most importantly, there were too few Buddhists. Chu Xiu and Yi Buoxuan were both from the Devil Dao. Lin Songlong was from the Elysium. Although he was not righteous, he was definitely evil. Now that Li Jiaodi had joined them, the Buddhists were at an absolute disadvantage. However, in a place like this, it was impossible for them to fight first. Only some short-sighted people at the bottom of the Jianghu would turn hostile before seeing any benefits. Therefore, they could only acquiesce to Li Jiaodi's participation. However, what Xiao Mo and the others did not know was that if they really dared to fight here, it was uncertain who Chu Xiu would help. Chu Xiu was a very vengeful person. In the past, Li Jiaodi had come to add insult to injury when he was in his most dire straits, denouncing him. Chu Xiu had never forgotten about that. Of course, neither Chu Xiu nor Li Jiaodi had forgotten about it. Therefore, the atmosphere was a little awkward when they met. Although Li Jiaodi was also a senior of the Yinma clan, it was good enough that Chu Xiu did not fight with her. Naturally, he would not greet her. Although she was a senior, she could not afford to offend a junior like Chu Xiu. Therefore, she could only stand there without saying anything. Yi Buoxuan looked at the two of them thoughtfully. He seemed to have thought of something, but he did not say it. Everyone looked at each other and walked towards the deepest part of the valley. As soon as they entered the valley, they felt an extremely strong aura shrouding over their heads. The power contained in this aura was very familiar to Chu Xiu. It was destruction and nirvanic extermination. It was the same power attribute as the Triple City Destroying Arrow. However, this power attribute was not strong. At the very least, it would not have any effect on an existence at Chu Xiu's level. However, after being shrouded by this power all year round, there was almost no vitality in the entire valley. There was not even a single green plant to be found. Some of the local barbarians had entered it, but the reason why they did not come out was probably because they had been eroded by the power of nirvanic extermination. After all, many of them had never practiced martial arts. As for those who escaped and died, because their bodies were stronger, they were not completely destroyed by the power of nirvana here. However, just like Chu Xiu's Triple City Annihilation Arrow, the power of nirvanic extermination wouldn't disappear at all. As long as one came into contact with a little bit of it, it would expand infinitely unless one used pure power to counteract it. Some of these barbarians of the barbaric land of the south didn't even have true energy, so of course, they couldn't block this force. It didn't take long for their bodies to be completely eroded and turned into ashes. As they continued forward, a huge stone door appeared in front of them. The stone door was completely pitch black, as if it had been made from the stones in the valley. However, it was filled with dense nirvana energy. Clearly, it had been refined using a secret technique. Moreover, there were some strange runes engraved on the stone door, or rather, some words. Anyway, no one could recognize them. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "It's a bit rough. It seems to have been built in a hurry." As the entrance of a sect, the door had to be meticulously carved. However, the stone door in front of them seemed to be two pieces of door planks. It was very rough, which didn't conform to common sense. "Do you recognize the words on it?" Xiaomo didn't speak. He didn't have eyes, so he could only use his perception to explore the direction of the words, so his speed was much slower than ordinary people. Su Jing frowned and said, "It's similar to some Sanskrit in ancient Buddhist scriptures, but it's more ancient and obscure. If you take one out alone, you can still understand a little, but when you put them together, they seem to be right but are actually wrong." Yi Buxuan said, "These are some incantations of the Mahakala demon cult. They mean destruction, nirvana, destruction, Mahakala, and so on." "You can understand these things?" Chu Xiu said in surprise. Yi Buxuan smiled and said, "I've already said that I'll definitely be useful if I join them. The legacy of the sixth demon sect is too similar to that of the Mahakala demon cult. It's as if they're two branches of the same sect. Even the Sanskrit they use is the same. Only the sixth demon sect understands this ancient Sanskrit. However, after so many years, the sixth demon sect has translated all kinds of ancient texts into modern languages. Even within the sixth demon sect, there are only a few who can understand this ancient Sanskrit." Xiao Mo and Su Jing didn't say anything. They instinctively hated the people of the sixth demon sect. Lin Songlong directly walked over and punched out. His powerful astral chi transformed into a dragon claw that slammed into the door, wanting to blast it open. His goal was the purest. He didn't care about the origins of the Mahakala demon cult. He just wanted what was inside. Chu Xiu had experienced Lin Songlong's strength before. His fleshly body was even stronger than Chu Xiu's. However, when he slammed into the door, it only shook a little. There wasn't even a crack. That was a little terrifying. Yi Buxuan shook his head and said, "It's useless. The Sanskrit on the door is inscribed with the power of nirvana. The stronger the power, not only will it not open the door, but it will also be absorbed." As he said that, Yi Buxuan formed a Buddhist seal with his hand. Specks of Buddhist light blossomed from his hand and seeped into the Sanskrit on the door. Seeing this, Xiao Mo and Su Jing's expressions didn't look good. Yi Buxuan, a person of the demonic path, had actually used the most orthodox Buddhist power. To the Buddhist lineage, this was simply a humiliation. However, as Yi Buxuan's power seeped into it, the door actually slowly opened. In an instant, an extremely destructive aura spread out. Everyone present couldn't help but release powerful astral chi in front of them to resist it. After stepping through the door, they came face to face with a huge palace. At the front was a huge statue of a god. It was impossible to tell whether the statue was male or female. It had 4 arms and 3 eyes. Each of its arms held a trident, an axe, a staff, and a longsword. As it danced, it gave off an extremely graceful feeling. However, below the statue, there were carvings of countless cities destroyed in flames. On one side was an extremely beautiful dance, and on the other side was a destroyed city. The statue's expression was calm and peaceful, without the slightest bit of evil aura. However, the scene itself was extremely evil. Yi Buxuan said in a low voice, "This is the main god worshipped by the Mahakala heavenly demon sect. His name is Shiva, the god of destruction. When he dances, his third eye will release a world-destroying fire that will incinerate everything. In fact, the ancestors of the sixth demon sect have calculated that the sixth demon king worshipped by the sixth demon sect is one of Shiva's incarnations. Both of them come from the same source." "Evil god heresy." Xiao Mo snorted coldly. A speck of golden Buddhist light had already flown towards the statue of Shiva. There were 2 major Buddhist sects in the world. Whether it was the Subodhi Monastery or the Great Light Temple, their orthodoxies and legacies might be different, but their core understanding of Buddhism was similar. The Buddhist lineage worshipped countless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, but none of them were so evil. Although there were many things that could prove that the Mahakala heavenly demon sect was related to the Buddhist lineage, in Xiaomo's opinion, this thing was definitely an evil god. Right at this moment, a sudden change occurred. The speck of Buddhist light did not destroy the statue. After the statue absorbed the speck of Buddhist light, it actually began to move. Its figure danced, and in its third eye, black flames bloomed. In an instant, it had already filled the entire hall. Seeing this scene, Xiaomo was momentarily stunned. He was actually not a rash person. If he had felt that there was something wrong with this statue, even if he hated this evil god, he would not have acted rashly. However, in his perception, this statue was only carved from ordinary stones. Just like the door outside, it was only soaked with some nirvanic energy. How could it have such a change just by absorbing his Buddhist light? And at this moment, under the illumination of the black flames, everyone could see the other things in the hall clearly. The stone walls of the entire hall were carved with reliefs. Those reliefs were scenes of Shiva's incarnations destroying the world. At this moment, under the illumination of the black flames, they seemed to have come alive and attacked everyone. No one had ever seen such evil things before. If it was an array formation, they could not even see the slightest bit of array Dao radiance, so how could they break it? Without any clues, everyone could only use their own skills to defend against these strange things. But at this moment, Chu Xiu's body throbbed. It was an extremely familiar power. One of the reliefs had content that Chu Xiu was very familiar with. It was actually the scene of Shiva piercing through the three-link city with the arrow of annihilation. Narrowing his eyes, Chu Xiu condensed the three-link city arrow in his hand. The arrow of annihilation exploded towards the relief, instantly blasting it apart. An extremely ethereal aura surged towards Chu Xiu. In an instant, illusions appeared before Chu Xiu's eyes. It was the scene of Shiva holding the magic bow and destroying the three-link city of the Azura clan. That arrow brought extreme destruction and death. The three-link city, which was said to be impenetrable, was destroyed by this arrow. That feeling was completely different from when Chu Xiu was comprehending the three-link city arrow and watching Dugu Weiwei destroy the Iron Emperor castle with one arrow. Dugu Weiwei's triple-link city-destroying arrow already possessed an aura that belonged solely to him. And now, the triple-link city-destroying arrow that Chu Xiu was looking at was the most primitive arrow, just like a legendary epic. When Chu Xiu had immersed all his mental strength in it, the charm of that arrow had been deeply imprinted in his mind. All these things happened in Chu Xiu's mind. It seemed to take a long time, but in fact, it only took a moment. Chu Xiu seemed to understand something. He subconsciously looked at the statue of Shiva, whose three eyes were still blooming with black flames. The next moment, Chu Xiu directly rushed towards the statue of Shiva. Chapter 9:16. The scene of Chu Xiu running towards the statue stunned the others. They did not understand what Chu Xiu was trying to do. Xiaomo had a problem because he touched the statue, and now he was going to touch it? Su Jing was about to say something, but Li Jiaodi had already blocked Chu Xiu's path and said angrily, "Chu Xiu, what are you doing? If you continue to act recklessly, do you want to bury all of us here?" Li Jiaodi had long been unhappy with Chu Xiu's actions. Seeing his actions, she stood up more actively than Su Jing to stop him. Moreover, among the people present, Li Jiaodi could not be said to be the weakest, but it was the most difficult for her to resist these strange sculptures. Needless to say, Lin Zonglong's strength was definitely at the peak of the true fire spirit refinement realm. Xiaomo and Su Jing both cultivated the Tao of Karma. Putting aside their combat power, at least they would not hurt themselves when dealing with such a situation. Although Yi Buxuan rarely fought in the Jianghu, it seemed that he was not weak. Therefore, among the people present, only Li Jiaodi was in a sorry state. "Get out of the way," Chu Xiu said coldly. He had never had a good impression of this woman. Previously, she had dared to make irresponsible remarks in front of him just because she was an elder of the hidden devil clan. She simply did not know what she was doing. Li Jiaodi screamed, "Chu Xiu! Is this your attitude? Last time, You almost implicated the entire Hidden Devil clan. This time, you are still reckless and brainless. If you touch the statue, what if you cause trouble again? You do things impulsively, selfishly, and recklessly. Wuxia actually wants you to take over the Hidden Devil clan. I think he is also muddle-headed. He is simply acting recklessly. A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. The true fire of inner strength burned in his arm, and he suddenly slapped out. Moreover, although it looked like he had only slapped out, it actually contained the power of the Black Tortoise Divine Palm of the Black Tortoise True Technique. The whistling Gang Qi instantly tore apart Li Jiaodi's protective Gang Qi. Perhaps she had never thought that Chu Xiu would dare to attack her in front of outsiders. Caught off guard, she was sent flying by Chu Xiu's slap and was almost burned by the black flames on one of the relief sculptures. Other than Lin Tonglong, everyone else was stunned. Su Jing and Xiao Mok hadn't expected the relationship between the two of them to be so bad that they had no qualms about attacking each other. Although Yi Buixuan had heard some things about the Yinma clan, he did not expect Chu Xiu to fall out with him so easily. Looking at Li Jiaodi, Chu Xiu said coldly, Chu Xiu, don't hit women unless I can't help it. Is Old Wei's name something you deserve to call? Are you qualified to tell me what to do? Li Jiaodi, don't provoke me again. I've killed more than 1 or 2 people in the true fire spirit refinement realm. If you have the guts, come and try. See if I dare to kill you. This woman was always confused. Even now, she did not understand what position she was in. Chu Xiu, I'm going to kill you. After being slapped in public, Li Jiaodi immediately fell into a state of madness. All these years, when had she ever been humiliated like this? Because there were relatively few female warriors in Jianghu, Li Jiaodi had been pursued by many people in Jianghu when she was young. To a large extent, her temper was accumulated at that time. Moreover, her luck and her talent were not bad. She actually cultivated to the true fire spirit refinement realm and became one of the big shots of the Yinma clan. Although she did not have much power, many of the younger generation of the Yinma clan treated her with respect. In addition, in the entire Yinma clan, whether it was Wuxia or the others, they did not want to lower themselves to the level of a woman. Therefore, she really had an illusion that she was extraordinary. Seeing that Li Jiaodi was about to rush over and fight with Chu Xiu, Yi Buixuan immediately stopped her and advised, calm down. Chu is not an idiot. He's also here now. He must know the consequences of touching the statue. Why would he do something that is courting death? On the surface, Yi Buixuan said so, but he secretly transmitted his voice to Li Jiaodi. The people of Buddhism are still here. This is not the place to fall out. Don't forget, Chu Xiu has never been in awe of the Yinma clan. It's not like he hasn't killed people of the Yinma clan before. Hearing Yi Buixuan's words, Li Jiaodi finally managed to calm down. She did not insist on attacking Chu Xiu. However, at this time, Yi Buixuan smiled bitterly in his heart. The people of the Yinma clan had fallen out with each other, but he was here to mediate. What was this? On the other side, Chu Xiu saw that Li Jiaodi did not continue to entangle him. The heavenly war case in his hand turned into a long saber. The powerful saber light directly cut through the relief. In an instant, black flames filled the air and even wrapped Chu Xiu in it. Seeing this scene, Li Jiaodi could not help but sneer in her heart. At this moment, she even wished that Chu Xiu could be burned to death by these strange black flames. Although Li Jiaodi was a member of the Yinma clan, she actually did not regard herself as a member of the Yinma clan from the bottom of her heart. For her, whether it was the identity of the successor of the Red Lotus Demon Venerable or the identity of one of the big shots of the Yinma clan, they were in fact pasting gold on her face. She enjoyed the various conveniences that this identity brought to her, but she never thought of giving up anything for this identity. If Chu Xiu became the leader of the Yinma clan, she would not have an easy time in the future. Therefore, she would rather Chu Xiu die now. It was better for the Yinma clan to be half dead than alive. However, Li Jiaodi's idea was destined to fail. The internal strength around Chu Xiu's body burst out to resist the black flames. These black flames also contained extreme power of nirvanic extermination, which was somewhat similar to the power of the Annihilation Triple City Arrow. Therefore, Chu Xiu's resistance to this kind of black flames was relatively high. Along the way, Chu Xiu cut through those reliefs. However, there was no more lifelike illusion in front of him, which also proved that Chu Xiu's previous guess was correct. These reliefs were not only filled with the power of destruction, but also contained the true martial Dao meaning of the great black demon cult's inheritance. Only the same kind of power could fuse with it. Chu Xiu's long blade instantly ignited with a black flame. It was actually the same as the flames that carried the power of destruction outside, or even purer. This was the power of the Annihilation Triple City Arrow, but it was not the Annihilation Triple City Arrow. If Chu Xiu had not absorbed the true martial Dao meaning of the Annihilation Triple City Arrow on the reliefs, he would not have been able to use this power alone. As the blade fell, the black world-annihilating fire destroyed everything and directly smashed the head of the deity statue. In an instant, an even more powerful world-annihilating fire suddenly gushed out from the broken deity statue and poured into Chu Xiu's body. In an instant, that lifelike illusion appeared in front of Chu Xiu again. Shiva, who had 4 arms and 3 eyes, danced in the sky. His dance was so beautiful and magnificent that it could not be described with words. But as he danced, similarly magnificent world-annihilating fire descended, and the ground under his feet began to burn, extinguish, and return to nothingness. Countless figures were constantly wailing and fighting, but under this world-annihilating heavenly might, it did not have the slightest effect. When everything returned to nothingness, green shoots bloomed from the world-annihilating fire. This represented life. In an instant, Chu Xiu seemed to understand something. The extreme of destruction was originally life. In heaven and earth, everything had 2 sides. When things reached an extreme, they would move in the opposite direction. Yin and Yang were reversed. Shiva's power of nirvana was revealed in the form of flames. In fact, this power had nothing to do with flames. However, fire itself contained the existence of 2 kinds of power, life and death. In ancient times, when the human race had just ascended, they had to endure hardships and hardship. Fire could bring warmth and vitality to people. However, when the flames rose to the extreme, they could also burn away any kind of life. Shiva's world-annihilating power had never been pure destruction, but the coexistence of life and death. When the illusion disappeared, the seemingly endless black flames disappeared as well. The sculptures shattered one after another, and there were even large cracks on some of them. Everyone present looked at Chu Xiu with a slightly surprised gaze. They knew that Chu Xiu had definitely obtained something from that statue, but no one asked much. Who would easily tell others about something like a fortuitous encounter? The few people present either had a grudge against Chu Xiu, or they just met Chu Xiu by chance and had no relationship with him. Of course, he would not tell others. Of course, even if Chu Xiu told them, it would be useless. These relief sculptures and the true meaning of martial arts contained within the statue could only be activated with the same source of power. Otherwise, if they acted rashly, it would cause the power within the statue to backfire, just like what happened to Xiao Moha. Chu Xiu looked around and said, "Master Yi, it's up to you now. This place is very strange. Don't tell me that the entire ancestral ground of the Mahakala demon sect is actually just this hall." When the black world-annihilating flames completely disappeared, everyone finally had the time to size up their surroundings. However, the strange thing was that the hall around them was a dead end. There was no exit at all. Even when Chu Xiu used his spiritual power to investigate, he did not find any other secret passages. It was as if there was only this hall in this place. This was very illogical. My surname is Nadi. Forget it, leave the rest to me. Everyone just needs to cooperate. Wuxia walked to the center of the hall and said, "The Mahakala demon sect and the 6th demon sect are of the same lineage. If I'm not wrong, the layout of this place should be similar to that of the 6th demon sect. It's all a habit. In the inheritance of the 6th demon sect, there is a kind of formation set up using Sanskrit. A part of one's own sect is stuffed into the overlapping space. This way, it helps in concealment, and in case someone attacks, it's also convenient to hide one's strength. The others had strange expressions. They had long heard that the sixth demon sect was divided into 6 skies of the desire realm. So it meant that it was divided into 6 overlapping spaces. However, although this method was secretive, it was a little sneaky. It was very different from the current habit of the Central Plains warriors of building their sects in a grand and luxurious manner. Chapter 9:17. Wuxia stood in the middle of the dilapidated hall and formed seals with his hands. A mysterious aura drifted out from his body and spread throughout the entire hall, constantly wandering and searching. In the end, there was a sudden burst of spatial fluctuations from 3 directions in the hall, and the space flickered like ripples on water. Wuxia hurriedly said, "Everyone, these 3 places are the portals. I can only find them. If we want to open them, we need a special secret technique. Right now, we don't have a way to enter, so we can only rely on you to forcefully break them." As soon as Wuxia's voice fell, Lin Tonglong blasted out a punch. Amidst the roar of a dragon, the punch directly shattered the portal. Chu Xiu also slashed down with his saber, and the saber, which contained traces of the power of nirvanic extermination, split a portal in half. The last portal was directly shattered by a Buddhist seal from Su Jing. Looking at the 3 portals, Wuxia said, "Everyone, there are 3 portals here. Shall we explore them separately or enter together?" Everyone present looked at each other and did not speak, but their meaning was already very clear. Of course, they would enter together. If they explored separately, who knew what the other party had and what they had here? This kind of thing was too much of a test of luck. Other low-level warriors were willing to try their luck, but for the warriors in the true fire spirit refining realm present, they believed in their own strength more and would rather snatch the treasures after discovering them. Wuxia shrugged and took the lead to walk into a portal, and the others followed. Inside the portal was a long corridor, and the walls of the corridor were engraved with all kinds of strange patterns. However, the expressions of Su Jing and Xiaoma became a little ugly, because there were many Buddha statues of the Buddhist sect on the wall. Although these Buddhas looked a little strange, they were indeed deeply connected to some of the Buddha statues of the Buddhist sect. At a glance, they could tell that they came from the same source. At this time, Chu Xiu suddenly looked at a mural and asked in surprise, "Master Yi, what does the Sanskrit on it mean?" Wuxia seemed to have acquiesced to this title and did not subconsciously correct it. He took a look at the mural and said, "This is the origin of the great black heavenly demon cult's name. They worship the guardian god, the great black heavenly demon god. Of course, this is just a title given to them by the Kunlun devil cult in the past. If you translate it according to these Sanskrit words, hee." Wuxia suddenly let out a strange laugh. He looked at Su Jing and Xiaoma and said in a low voice, "According to the Sanskrit translation, it should be Vairocana Buddha. Of course, he has another name, Vairocana." The reason why Chu Xiu was interested in this mural was because it was 80% similar to Vairocana. The other 20% was different because the Vairocana in the mural had 4 arms. Furthermore, it was not the dignified image of a normal Vairocana. Instead, it was slightly ferocious and angry. Among the Buddhist techniques, the strongest technique Chu Xiu had was Master Tam Yuan's Great Sun-Changing Technique, but Chu Xiu rarely used it anymore. With Chu Xiu's current strength, even Master Tam Yuan would not be his match at his peak. Naturally, this technique was not very useful to Chu Xiu. However, when he saw the mural just now, he suddenly had a strange feeling, as if he had thought of something, but also as if he had not. At this time, Su Jing's smile darkened, and he said coldly, "Nonsense. How could Vairocana be translated as such an evil god?" Wuxia said calmly, "It's up to you whether you believe it or not. The mural is placed here, and even a blind person can see the connection between him and Vairocana. Oh, Master Xiaomoha, please don't mind me. I'm just giving an example, not talking about you. Even if you don't know Sanskrit, there are definitely some Sanskrit classics left in your temple. If you don't believe me, then make a copy of this Sanskrit, and go back to see if it's the same as the Sanskrit of Vairocana described in your temple." Both Su Jing and Xiao Moha's faces darkened, but the truth was right there. They could not do anything about it even if they did not believe it. However, Chu Xiu was currently staring at the mural of Vairocana, or Mahakala. His gaze became extremely strange. On one side, there was a resplendent Buddhist light, and on the other side, there was an apocalyptic demonic flame. He seemed to have understood something. Mahakala was Vairocana, and Vairocana was Mahakala. One represented blazing vitality, and the other was gloomy annihilation. Just like the apocalyptic flames, when things reached an extreme, they would move in the opposite direction. The legacy of this Mahakala demon cult was indeed extraordinary. Disregarding all the complicated appearances, its source was still yin and yang, life and death. Wuxia exclaimed, "Official Chu, official Chu." Chu Xiu came back to his senses and casually said, "It's nothing, let's continue." The group continued forward, and at the end of the corridor were rooms. They should be the residences of the disciples of the Mahakala demon cult. Chu Xiu and the rest went over to check, and all of them were empty. This bunch of people seemed to be like ascetics. Other than some clothes and other things, they did not even have any elixirs for cultivation. It seemed like the people of the Mahakala demon cult had all left the southern wilderness, and this place had been abandoned by them. However, everyone still felt that it was a little strange. The construction of this place was a little too crude. Since this place was the ancestral land of the Mahakala demon cult, even if they had migrated out of the southern wilderness 500 years ago and headed to the central plains to spread their teachings, this place could have been thrown here and completely abandoned, right? The group continued forward, and at the end of the corridor was also a room. To be precise, it should be a small palace. Everyone looked at each other. This place should be the residence of the person in charge of the Mahakala demon cult in the past. Wuxia took a look at the door, shook his head and said, "There's an array restriction, we need to think of a way." Before Wuxia could finish his words, Lin Tonglong, who was at the side, had already punched out directly at the door. Sun was instantly shocked. Were the people in the heavenly gates all crazy? Weren't they afraid of triggering some array to destroy the things inside? But fortunately, the array on the door was purely used as a door lock. After being smashed by Lin Songlong's punch, it only gave off a burst of light and there were no other effects. Lin Songlong said indifferently, "Think of a way? Troublesome." Wuxia looked at Lin Songlong with a strange gaze. This was how the people of Heavenly Gates did things? What a weirdo. However, he also knew the strength of the Heavenly Gates divine general, so he didn't get angry. Everyone just pushed the door open and entered the hall. There were more things left in this hall. Apart from clothes, there were all kinds of strange things, such as small Buddha statues and God statues. Moreover, they weren't carved with stones like the ones outside. Although they didn't know what material they were made of, they were much more exquisite and contained a strong power of nirvanic extermination. However, these things weren't of much use. These Buddha statues and God statues were purely used for worship. The power of nirvanic extermination on them was also the result of a long period of worship, so they weren't treasures. At this moment, Wuxia's heart suddenly stirred, and he subconsciously looked in a direction. Although the cultivation method he cultivated was different from that of the Mahakala demon cult, they came from the same source, so he was very sensitive to some of the powers in this place. However, everyone present was in the true fire spirit refinement realm, especially Su Jing and Xiao Mo. Both of them cultivated the path of karma, so their perception and mental strength were even stronger. When Wuxia moved, he was immediately detected by them. Since he had been discovered, Wuxia didn't hide anymore. He waved his hand, and his gang chi directly smashed one of the walls. There were many boxes inside, and there were some bottles and jars, as well as some random things. Clearly, they were the personal belongings of the previous owner of this place. There weren't many valuable items among them, but one of them caught their attention. It was something like a scroll, and there was a faint wave of the power of nirvanic extermination coming from it, as well as a faint smell of blood. Being watched by everyone, no one could take it alone. Wuxia waved his hand, and he directly rolled the scroll over with his gang chi, and placed it in the middle of everyone. Touching the material of the scroll, Wuxia raised his eyebrows and said, "It's made of human skin, and it's the human skin of a martial artist who specializes in body refinement. The weakest is at the real pellet state, and it can ensure that it won't rot for thousands of years." Everyone present raised their eyebrows subconsciously. Using the human skin of a real pellet state martial artist as a scroll, this is a bit too generous. Wuxia opened the scroll, and it was filled with dense Sanskrit. Only Wuxia understood these things, and even he was actually a little stumbling in reading them. After all, the sixth heavenly devil sect had existed for so many years, and had been passed down from generation to generation. Even the ancient books and records of the sect, which had been written entirely in Sanskrit, had been replaced with the current language. He could distinguish a few individual words, but reading out a long string of Sanskrit words was a bit difficult for him. After a long while, Li Jiaodi said anxiously, "What is written on it? Is it a technique or something?" Both Su Jing and Xiao Mo had condensed their mental power to the extreme, and their minds were focused on Wuxia. In terms of cultivation and divination, Su Jing and Xiao Mo were definitely at the Grand Master level, and they were qualified to stand at the pinnacle of the martial world. Therefore, their mental power and perception were almost far superior to the martial artists of the same rank. Under the joint efforts of the two of them to monitor with mental power at the same time, even if Wuxia told a lie, they would be able to see through it. Of course, Wuxia wasn't going to lie, because this thing was not a treasure like a technique. Wuxia put down the scroll and took a deep breath. This thing was recorded by the master of the Mahakala demon cult in the past. It's not a diary. To be precise, it's a mission record. What's written on it is a bit shocking. The Mahakala demon cult, to be precise, is not a sect at all, but an existence from the outside world. Chapter 9:18. Even if Wuxia didn't say it, everyone present knew that it was definitely not a diary. What kind of decent person would write a diary? Who would write down their inner thoughts in a diary? How could they be considered as inner thoughts if they were written down? Apart from those who were truly innocent and unguarded, those experts who had reached a high position, who would write such a thing? Looking at Wuxia's sigh, Li Jiaodi couldn't help but anxiously say, "Don't keep us in suspense." "What do you mean? What do you mean by coming from outside the domain?" Wuxia glanced at Li Jiaodi. Chu Xiu also glanced at Li Jiaodi. This woman really didn't know how to speak. It should be said that she didn't know what she was talking about. Wuxia was the sect master of the sixth demon sect. He was in charge of a top-notch Devil Dao sect. His strength was considered one of the upper echelons even among the bright devil and hidden devil sects. And what about Li Jiaodi? Wuxia could represent the entire sixth demon sect, but Li Jiaodi couldn't represent the entire hidden devil sect. She actually dared to shout and wrangle in front of Wuxia. This was because Wuxia had a good temper. If it was Chu Xiu, he would probably have given her another slap. He paused for a moment before continuing. According to what is written on this scroll, our so-called Mahakala demon cult, to be more precise, should be the Sanskrit sect, Shiva temple, and Mahakala deity palace. Therefore, the entire Mahakala demon cult is only a branch of the Sanskrit sect. Everyone present, except for Lin Tengeng, had their expressions change. If it was as Wuxia said, this was a little terrifying. Although the great Mahakala heavenly demon cult was easily annihilated by Dugu Weiwa in the past, the one who did it was Dugu Weiwa. Without Dugu Weiwa, what kind of strength would the great Mahakala heavenly demon cult have? It would definitely belong to the upper echelons of the pugilistic world. In the end, such a powerful Mahakala heavenly demon cult was actually a branch of a sect. This was simply inconceivable. Su Jing and Xiao Maha were silent. They had seen the name Sanskrit in the ancient records of their sect. Previously, they had thought that the so-called Sanskrit was another name for the ancient Buddhist sections. Now, it seemed that there was some misunderstanding. Sanskrit was just Sanskrit, an independent existence. Wuxia continued, according to this scroll, Sanskrit is located in a place called Daluocean. There, the Brahmin sect and the heavenly Luo treasure Buddha fought fiercely. Due to various reasons, the Brahmin sect was at a disadvantage. Brahma, the ruler of the Brahma temple in Sanskrit, had been found. I didn't quite understand what this word meant, but it seemed to be some sort of reversed usage of a key that would allow some people to return to the ancestral land and obtain what they needed. Then, the plan was executed. The Great Black Sky Demon Cult, or rather, the Great Black Sky Deity Palace, all arrived at the ancestral grounds, but they discovered that the ancestral grounds had undergone a heaven-shaking change. Absolute heaven is pressed for time. They don't have much time left. And then, Su Jing couldn't help but ask. Wuxia pointed at the scroll and said, "That's it. You should know what happened next." The Great Black Sky Demon Cult walked out of the southern barbaric lands and was completely destroyed by the Kunlun Devil Cult. Everyone present let out a long breath, and their eyes flickered with a strange light. There wasn't much recorded in the scroll, and because of Wuxia's translation problems, some parts were still a little unclear. But the content recorded was extremely shocking, and it was related to some secrets of the ancient Great Calamity. They didn't know about the Sanskrit, but they knew about the Heavenly Luo Treasure Buddha. The Heavenly Luo Treasure Buddha was a top Buddhist sect in the ancient times, and this Sanskrit was able to fight against it. Although it was at a disadvantage, it was obvious that this Sanskrit was in existence on the same level as the Heavenly Luo Treasure Buddha. Most importantly, this incident happened 500 years ago. 500 years ago, the Heavenly Luo Treasure Buddha, which only existed in ancient legends, was fighting against the Sanskrit. What did this mean? It meant that the ancient Buddhist sect, the Heavenly Luo Treasure Buddha, still existed. At least 500 years ago, it existed in a place called the Dalu Ocean. In fact, everyone had always been very curious about the whereabouts of the ancient sects and the group of experts after the ancient Great Calamity. However, although they were curious, they did not find any direct evidence to prove where the ancient sects had gone. There were only some scattered records. Coupled with their guesses, they could more or less come to a conclusion, and that was that a portion of the ancient sects had indeed successfully avoided the calamity. And now, the things recorded in this scroll were the most direct evidence. The so-called sky-splitting plan of the ancient great sects had indeed succeeded. They had found a place called Daluo Celestial, and from the looks of it, they were living quite well. It was very simple to come to the conclusion that they were living well. If they still had the mood to fight each other and worship Buddha, then they must be living well. If they were to become like the Green Capital, even living would be tiring. How would they still have the mood to fight and worship Buddha? Everyone present was clearly shocked by this news. The only ones who were clear-headed were Li Jiaodi and Lin Tong. Li Jiaodi was calm because she didn't care about these things at all. To her, she didn't care about the ancient secrets and other messy things. She only cared about how much she could benefit from her line of work. As for Lin Songlong's calmness, Chu Xiu felt a little puzzled. He had always felt that from the moment they entered, Lin Tonglong seemed to have known about these things in advance. What he wanted was only one thing in the Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult. As long as he got that thing, everything else didn't matter. After digesting what they had just learned, they turned around and went to the other two portals to check them out. There was nothing special about the second portal. It was a small palace, and each palace had a statue of a god. There were even incense offerings on it. This place was very normal. Places like the Great Light Temple and Subodhi Monastery had such places to worship Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Moreover, this place also indirectly proved that the Buddhist lineage had a deep connection with Sanskrit. Some of the statues were quite similar to the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and protectors of the Buddhist lineage. When they stepped into the third portal, what appeared in front of them was a bronze door covered with arrays. Previously, the surrounding buildings were all built with the local black stones, but this place was actually sealed with a bronze gate. It was obvious that this was not an ordinary place. Wuxia walked over to take a look and said in a deep voice, "Master Su Jing and Master Xiao Mok, it's up to you. The array laid here is a protective array. If you break it with force, it will easily cause a backlash. Both of you should be proficient in arrays. Break the array with an array and open this door." Su Jing and Xiao Mok did not waste any time and immediately took action. They used some extremely simple tools to set up an array and collided with the array on the bronze door, finally destroying it. It seemed like the people from the Great Black Heavenly Demon cult had really been in a hurry. Although the portal seemed to have been built with some effort, the strength of the array was not too strong. After pushing open the door, what appeared before everyone's eyes was a place similar to a treasure vault. Everyone's eyes lit up. This was the place they were looking for. Even if the Great Black Heavenly Demon cult had been in a hurry, they must have built such a place and left their precious items here. This was so that if they carried their items with them, they would lose them or fall into the hands of others if something happened to them. Before everyone could react, Lin Tonglong's figure shot out like a cannonball. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in the treasure vault and grabbed something. This divine general of the heavenly gates had always kept a low profile. Apart from Chu Xiu, the others had almost ignored him. When they saw that Lin Songlong had made the first move, Su Jing and Xiao Mok immediately acted to stop him. No matter what Lin Songlong wanted, he couldn't let Lin Songlong take the initiative. Su Jing formed a Buddhist seal, and the moment Lin Songlong landed, he took the initiative to step into a golden lotus. In an instant he was covered by a Buddhist light. At the same time, Xiao Mok chanted Buddhist scriptures. Amidst the faint sound of Buddhist chanting, a hazy Buddhist shadow descended, seemingly suppressing him. Lin Songlong snorted coldly and transformed into a huge dragon. As the dragon roared, it fought against the heavens. A powerful and terrifying fist intent tore everything apart. As the dragon roared, the golden lotus shattered and the Buddhist shadow was smashed by Lin Songlong's fist. Su Jing and Xiao Mok's expressions changed. They had not expected this divine general of the heavenly gates to be so exaggerated. Even when the two of them attacked together, they were unable to stop him. Chu Xiu had originally wanted to attack as well. However, when he saw the thing that Lin Songlong was heading towards, he stopped in his tracks. There was only one thing in the direction that Lin Songlong was heading towards. It was a box with a stone on it. However, there were extremely complicated patterns on it. It looked like it had been carved by someone, but it also seemed natural. This thing was extremely familiar to Chu Xiu. It was the sky key that was currently in his dantian. The people of the heavenly gates had actually come for this thing. Previously in the illusory six realms, Kuang Shiyue had obviously come for this thing as well. The people of the heavenly gates seemed to have some sort of intelligence that allowed them to know where this thing was. Based on this deduction, Divine Lord Luo had appeared in the underworld previously for this thing as well. Lin Songlong had been talking about the Heavenly Gates mission. It was obvious that their mission was to collect this sky key. Previously, the key had fallen into Chu Xiu's hands, causing Kuang Shiyue's mission to fail. That was why it was Lin Songlong's turn to appear in the underworld. However, Chu Xiu was still surprised. What exactly was this key used for? At present, Chu Xiu only knew that this sky key had the ability to travel through space. It could allow him to break through the space barrier and travel back and forth to the oasis space. Now, it seemed that this sky key definitely did not have such a simple function. Could it really allow people to travel to the heavens? Chapter 9:19. Lin Songlong's goal in coming here had always been clear. He was here for the sky-piercing key. He had no need for anything else, nor was he interested in it. After breaking free from Su Jing and Xiao Maha's entanglement, Lin Songlong took the sky-piercing key and immediately turned to leave. This scene caused the others to be incomparably stunned, but after hesitating for a moment, no one gave chase. Su Jing and the others did not give chase because they did not know the value of this item. It did not seem worth it to fight with the divine general of the sky gates for something of unknown value and give up everything else here. As for Chu Xiu, he did not give chase because he already had the sky-piercing key. Therefore, the moment Lin Songlong made his move, Chu Xiu also made his move. His target was the ancient book in the corner. The things here were all written in Sanskrit. Other than Yibuxuan, no one else knew what was written on it. However, Chu Xiu was certain that the item in it had a deep connection with the source power of the Mahakala Heavenly Demon Sect, which was the World Annihilation Flame. Previously, when Chu Xiu had shattered the statue in the main hall, He had gained insight into the true martial intent of the World Annihilation Flame. The ancient book gave Chu Xiu a different feeling, as though there was some kind of power within it that was throbbing. Seeing Chu Xiu make his move, Yi Buoxuan and Li Jiaodi followed suit. The only difference was that Yi Buoxuan could understand the Sanskrit and knew what he wanted. He also knew what the most valuable item here was. As for Li Jiaodi, she purely wanted to make things difficult for Chu Xiu. Most women were more vengeful than men, especially women like Li Jiaodi, who had an extreme personality. She would remember the slap that Chu Xiu had given her for the rest of her life. If she did not fight with Chu Xiu now, who would she fight with? Moreover, Li Jiaodi also had her own thoughts. Needless to say, with Chu Xiu's strength, the first thing he fancied was definitely a good thing. It was definitely the right thing to snatch it from him. A fiery lotus descended from the sky. In an instant, the lotus bloomed, and countless sword qi that burned with blood flames shot out from it, gushing towards Chu Xiu. The black tortoise divine palm in Chu Xiu's hand slammed down. The powerful palm force swept across everything, shattering the blood flame sword qi. Looking behind him, Chu Xiu said coldly, "Li Jiaodi, are you courting death?" This woman had challenged his bottom line time and time again. Did she really think that he, Chu Xiu, would have tender feelings for the fairer sex? Moreover, Chu Xiu was not in the mood to have tender feelings for such an old woman. Although Li Jiaodi still looked very young and was still attractive, in reality, it was only because she had cultivated a secret technique. No one knew her actual age, but she was definitely older than Chu Wuji. Lu Jiang, he said disdainfully from the blood soul bead. So this is the woman who obtained the Red Lotus Demon Venerable's inheritance? This is simply a humiliation to the Red Lotus Demon Venerable. In the past, the Red Lotus Demon Venerable was so charming that countless righteous heroes fell for him. This woman can't even compare to a hair of the Red Lotus Demon Venerable. Hearing Lu Jianghe's tone, Chu Xiu was a little surprised. This person, who had always felt that he could stand shoulder to shoulder with the 4 demon venerables of the Kunlun devil cult in the past, was rather indignant. However, he seemed to be very respectful towards the Red Lotus Demon Venerable. Could it be because the Red Lotus Demon Venerable had redeemed him from Ning Xuanji? Li Jiaodi snorted coldly and said, "Chu Xiu, do you really think I'm afraid of you? The treasures here are all ownerless. You can snatch them, but I can't? Well, since you want to snatch them, I'll give you the chance." As soon as he finished speaking, the heavenly Dao war case in Chu Xiu's hand had already evolved into the peerless heavenly saber. As the saber slashed down, the Buddhist light, devil qi, and Dao accumulation condensed into one. Its power was simply terrifying. In fact, Li Jiaodi had never really fought with Chu Xiu. Although she had been slapped by Chu Xiu just now, it was just a slap. It did not reflect Chu Xiu's true power at all. It was not until she really started fighting with Chu Xiu that she realized how terrifying Chu Xiu was. His powerful power was almost enough to make people despair. The crimson-red longsword in Li Jiaodi's hand rippled like a blooming lotus petal, barely blocking Chu Xiu's saber. But under the power of the saber, the ripples on the lotus petal shattered one after another, unable to withstand a single blow. After exchanging several blows, she was forced to retreat step by Chu Xiu, unable to fight back at all. At this time, Su Jing, Xiao Mok, and Yi Buoxuan had already begun to plunder the treasures, but Chu Xiu had no intention of competing with them. He kept chasing after Li Jiaodi. Li Jiaodi could not help but scream, "Chu Xiu! Aren't you afraid that you won't be able to get anything in the end?" At this time, Li Jiaodi was also somewhat regretting provoking Chu Xiu at this time. Who would have thought that Chu Xiu would attack her like a madman, not even bothering to snatch the treasures? Won't get it? There's no need for you to worry. I'll deal with you first, and even if I can't get the other things, I'll still be able to snatch them. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu slashed out with his sea-cleaving saber. Although they were in an extremely narrow space, and Chu Xiu was already suppressing his power to prevent the power of the saber from spreading, it was still astonishing. Li Jiaodi could not help but curse when she felt the power of the saber. Her left hand slid across the tip of the sword, and blood flowed in an instant. but the blood that streaked across the air turned into a red lotus mark, branded between her brows, crimson like a flame. At this moment, Li Jiaodi's aura had already undergone a great change. The tip of the sword pointed forward, seemingly slow, but it left a lotus mark in the air. The blood-red lotus bloomed, and the fire-like sword qi was like the rising sun. It dyed everything red, and it extinguished Chu Xiu's sea-cleaving saber. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. Li Jiaodi still had some foundation. Legend had it that she had inherited a portion of the Red Lotus Demon Venerable's legacy. Although according to Chu Wuji, she had only inherited some scattered remnants of the Red Lotus Demon Venerable's legacy, it was still left behind by one of the 4 Demon Venerables in the past. Its power was still shocking enough. At this moment, Lu Jianghu was especially agitated, and he said with a look of disgust, "This kind of trash actually learned the Red Lotus Demon Venerable's Red Lotus Mark of Hellfire. This is simply an insult. Chu Xiu, kid, the Red Lotus Demon Venerable's Red Lotus Mark of Hellfire condensed the hellfire on her body, and her state of mind was burned by the hellfire. That was how she was able to use the Red Lotus to protect her state of mind and condense this mark. This woman is stupid and extreme. There's no way she can endure the trial of tempering her heart with hellfire. Before she can truly master it, she'll probably go berserk." Seeing how she ignited the hellfire with the power of her qi and blood just now, it's obvious that she has only cultivated half of this move. As long as you use the power of your primordial spirit to disturb the hellfire, she will be devoured by the hellfire without you needing to do anything. Kill this woman. Don't embarrass the Red Lotus Demon Venerable. Chu Xiu suddenly said, "The Red Lotus Demon Venerable is a woman, right?" Lu Jianghu was stunned. "How did you know? Who told you that?" Chu Xiu said calmly, "I've never seen you so agitated for Dugu Weiwei or the other 3 demon venerables. You're so angry for a beauty." Just as Lu Jianghu wanted to explain, Chu Xiu had already made his move. The demonic qi longbow condensed in Chu Xiu's hand. However, at this moment, the demonic qi longbow condensed in Chu Xiu's hand was vivid and lifelike. Moreover, his eyes were extremely clear, unlike before, where they were corroded by the demonic qi. In the past, what Chu Xiu had learned was Dugu Weiwei's Triple City Annihilation Arrow. After seeing the true martial true intent of the Triple City Annihilation Arrow, Chu Xiu had comprehended another level of it. Therefore, what Chu Xiu used now was not the original Triple City Annihilation Arrow, nor was it Dugu Weiwei's Triple City Annihilation Arrow. Instead, it was the Triple City Annihilation Arrow that belonged to him, Chu Xiu. The arrow shot out explosively as if it had pierced through the void. The glorious Triple City Annihilation Arrow shattered in front of the arrow, and the power of nirvanic extermination permeated everything. The red lotuses shattered, and the sword qi was torn apart. Li Jiaodi screamed, and the long sword in her hand rippled with extremely hot red lotus hellfire. As the sword qi scattered, countless red lotuses bloomed in front of her. However, like a flower blooming in the night, they were instantly destroyed by the power of nirvanic extermination of the Triple City Annihilation Arrow. By the time the power of nirvanic extermination was 10 feet away from Li Jiaodi had almost exhausted all her strength to counteract the power of the arrow. However, before she could breathe a sigh of relief, a golden primordial spirit arrow appeared from the dissipating power of nirvanic extermination and shot straight at Li Jiaodi's mind. Immediately, the primordial spirit golden light exploded, stirring up the hellfire. In that instant, Li Jiaodi's mind was filled with illusions. Her inner demons kept appearing under the roasting of the hellfire. Her face immediately paled and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Just as Chu Xiu was about to continue attacking, a red light bloomed around Li Jiaodi's body. Her figure actually disappeared in the blink of an eye, leaving only a red lotus floating on the spot. In the end, it turned into pure spiritual energy of the world and dissipated. Chu Xiu was stunned. "You didn't tell me that she knew this move." Even Chu Xiu couldn't figure out how Li Jiaodi managed to escape. This woman's mouth was so foul, and her personality was so bad. She had not been killed after so many years, so he believed that this move was the key. Lu Jianghu was stunned. Didn't that Chu kid from the Yinma clan say that this woman had only received a little bit of the Red Lotus Demon Venerable's inheritance? How did she even know the Red Lotus escape? You can't blame me for the information being wrong. Then, Lu Jianghu seemed to think of something and hurriedly said, "That's right, with the Red Lotus Demon Venerable?" Before Lu Jianghu could finish, Chu Xiao interrupted. "There's no need to explain. An explanation is just a cover-up. Besides, why do you need to explain to me? I'm not interested in listening to you cover up right now." With that, Chu Xiao did not give Lu Jianghu a chance to continue speaking. He immediately ran over to Su Jing and Xiao Mok. Just now, he had been staring at Li Jiaodi as she fought. Xiao Moha and Su Jing had already plundered everything that could be plundered and were rushing towards the ancient books that Chu Xiao had seen. He had no time to waste with Lu Jianghu. Chapter 920. In the eyes of Su Yen and Xiao Mok, the battle between Chu Xiao and Li Jiaodi was a dogfight. They were happy to see the internal strife of the Yinma lineage, but they had not expected Chu Xiao to finish off Li Jiaodi so quickly and attack them in the blink of an eye. In terms of pure combat strength, both Su Jing and Xiao Mok were actually inferior to the current Chu Xiao. However, warriors who cultivated the Tao of Karma had a slightly different battle style from others. The difficulty of dealing with them was not something that ordinary people could compare to. However, the result was very different when they encountered Chu Xiao. Chu Xiao had not cultivated the Tao of Karma that was purely used for divination, but the heaven's sun gazing at air could be considered a secret technique that could deduce the secrets of heaven. Now, Chu Xiao no longer used the heaven's sun gazing at air to fight his enemies. At most, he would use the heaven's sun gazing at air to lock onto his opponent's dodging position in advance when he used the triple city destruction arrow. Every arrow was almost guaranteed to hit its target. This was not because the heaven's sun gazing at air was not strong enough, but because the current Chu Xiao's martial path was already more inclined towards suppressing others with strength. He directly used strength to crush his opponents. However, now that he was facing Su Jing and Xiao Mok, the heaven's sun gazing at air came in handy once again. Su Jing formed a Buddhist seal with his hand, and Buddha shadows descended one after another, crushing towards Chu Xiao. However, every Buddha shadow seemed to target all of Chu Xiao's weaknesses. Although Xiao Mok had lost his sight, his perception had increased by a notch ever since he lost his sight. He chanted Buddhist mantras, which resounded in Chu Xiao's mind, but in reality, it was also weakening his perception. At the same time, the two of them were constantly deducing all the flaws in Chu Xiao's body, as well as all of his subsequent changes, and so on. Two of the strongest existences in the Buddhist sect who cultivated the Tao of Karma joined hands to divine a person. They could divine almost from the beginning of the fight to the end. Even if there were 10,000 changes, they could divine it. However, when they started to deduce Chu Xiao, they discovered that there was actually another force on Chu Xiao's body that was resisting their deductions, and it magnified every result by 1,000 or 10,000 times. In this way, not to mention 10,000 possibilities, there were even 100,000 or 1,000,000 possibilities. Although they cultivated the Tao of Karma, it was actually just a secret technique to steal the secrets of the heavens. Only gods and Buddhas could truly take every possibility into account. They were not gods or Buddhas. They were still humans. Hence, they could not divine such an outcome. Su Jing and Xiao Mok turned their heads towards each other at the same time. Su Jing was looking at Xiao Mok, while Xiao Mok was looking at him out of habit. This situation could only mean one thing. Chu Xiao had also cultivated a secret technique that involved the Tao of Karma. Furthermore, his level of cultivation was not low. However, what they could not understand was how someone like Chu Xiao was able to cultivate such a secret technique. Where was the justice in this world? Before they could recover from their shock, Chu Xiao had already made his move. The sea-cleaving saber swept everything with its monstrous might. The sharpness of the saber forced them to retreat. At this moment, Chu Xiao formed a Buddhist seal with his hand and cast the great sun-shifting technique that he had not used for a long time. The Mahavarokana Dharma appeared behind Chu Xiao. It struck with its palm, and the scorching and dazzling Buddhist light suppressed everything. Su Jing and Xiao Mok felt very uncomfortable when they saw Chu Xiu, a person of the demonic path, use the Buddhist Dharma. However, they could still withstand this move. Su Jing's white and plump smiling face was solemn and serene. He unleashed the 9 transformation lion roar of the Great Light Temple. Every time he roared, there would be ripples, and the Buddhist light in front of him would dissipate. On Xiao Mok's side, there were thousands of Buddha shadows circling around him. They were bathed in the light of the great sun. Not only were they unharmed, but they were also absorbing the power of the light. However, at this moment, something strange happened. The Mahavarokana Dharma behind Chu Xiu suddenly changed. A black dot appeared on the forehead of the Dharma. As the black dot gradually expanded, the solemn Mahavarokana Dharma turned into an angry one. 2 arms appeared behind him, and they formed a seal at the same time. In an instant, the black dot had completely infected Mahavarokana, turning him into the Mahavarokana demon god. Mahavarokana, Mahavarokana. The pinnacle of light was darkness. The Mahavarokana chanted, but what it brought was endless eternal night. In an instant, Su Jing and Xiao Mok's vision went dark. Endless power of nirvanic extermination invaded their bodies. Under this pressure, they could not sense anything. They could only use all the power in their bodies to resist it. Wuxia, who had already gotten what he wanted, had been observing the battle between Chu Xiu, Su Jing, and Xiao Mok. He was not of the lurking devil lineage, so he would not help Chu Xiu if he wanted to take the treasure. However, he was of the demonic path. Furthermore, he was from the 6th demon sect, which had a great feud with the Buddhist path. Therefore, he had already made plans. If Chu Xiu was at a disadvantage and in danger, he would help. He could discuss the Buddhist path, and he could earn a favor from the lurking devil lineage. However, after seeing Chu Xiu make his move, he knew that he could only watch from the sidelines. Chu Xiu's victory was already secured. It was no wonder that an old monster like Wei Xia would treat Chu Xiu as his successor. He had even used all his connections and power to send Chu Xiu to the position of the lurking devil lineage's successor. Putting everything else aside, Chu Xiu's shocking talent in the martial Tao was definitely the most terrifying person Iboxen had ever seen. Just now, Chu Xiu had seen the portrait of the Mahavarokana. Wuxia had translated to him that the Mahavarokana was the Vairokana. It had only been a short while, but Chu Xiu had already figured out the key and connected the 2 powers. This level of comprehension and talent was simply terrifying. At the same time, this also proved that Chu Xiu had already cultivated this Buddhist technique to the extreme. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to convert it so naturally. Seeing that Su Jing and Xiao Maha were temporarily resisting the power of nirvanic extermination, Chu Xiu went directly to the ancient book and kept it in his bag with a wave of his hand. It was not that he did not want to kill these 2 people, but that he could not. They were just fighting for the treasure, not fighting to the death. Although these 2 people were temporarily suppressed by him, they still had a base that they had not used. After all, this was the southern land, which was considered the sphere of influence of the Subodhi monastery. Chu Xiu did not want to delay for too long. Who knew if Rama would suddenly attack? Therefore, after getting the item, Chu Xiu turned and left. When Wuxia saw that Chu Xiu had left, he naturally would not stay here any longer. He left immediately as well. Otherwise, he would easily become the punching bag of these 2 monks. When Su Jing and Xiao Ma finally completely offset the power of nirvanic extermination in front of them, they looked at the empty hall and suddenly sighed. Previously, you said that you miscalculated the karma of Chu Xiu, but now I suddenly feel that you did not miscalculate. Xiao Ma was surprised. What do you mean? Su Jing's fat face no longer had the smile of a Maitreya Buddha. Instead, there was a trace of worry. With Chu Xiu's talent and potential and more importantly his ruthless nature, I am worried that he will grow to the level of Dugu Weiwei in the future. At that time, let alone your Subodhi monastery, any sect in the world will be at risk of being annihilated. Xiao Maha was stunned. Then he shook his head. Absolutely impossible. In the past 10,000 years, there has only been one Dugu Weiwei in the Jianghu. How could another demon like him appear so soon? Chu Xiu's talent and potential were indeed frightening, but Dugaweiwei was already in existence that made people despair. No matter how much Xiao Maha thought of Chu Xiu, he would not elevate him to the level of Dugaweiwei. Su Jing smiled bitterly. I hope that I'm just worrying for nothing. After a moment of silence, the two of them left. However, Su Jing returned directly to the Great Light Temple, while Xiao Ma had someone take over the ruins of the Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult. Although the place had been ransacked by everyone, there was no guarantee that they would not overlook anything. It was worth searching again. At this time, in the outside world, Chu Xiu had already found a secluded place to read through the book. However, when he opened it, he suddenly smacked his head. He had miscalculated. He had only felt that this thing had some connection to the flames of annihilation that he had comprehended. However, he had forgotten that all the words in the Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult were written in Sanskrit. This cultivation method must be the same. At this time, Yi Buxian walked out of the black fog like a ghost. He smiled and said, Official Chu, are you worried about the cultivation method? If Official Chu trusts me, I can help you translate these cultivation method books. The cultivation methods of the sixth demon sect were written in Sanskrit in the beginning. They are cryptic and difficult to understand. It took several generations of hard work before we finally succeeded in translating them. It might take some effort to translate those ordinary words, but I can guarantee that I will be accurate when translating this cultivation method. Moreover, Official Chu, you don't have to worry about me secretly learning this cultivation method. Although the Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult and the Sixth Demon Sect come from the same source, our martial arts are completely different. The legacy of the Sixth Demon Sect is not inferior to that of the Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult. It's not worth it to switch to another cultivation method. Not everyone in the pugilistic world is like Official Chu, who can cultivate Tao, Buddhism, and demonic. Yi Buxian had no ill intentions for appearing here. He had purely come with the intention of forming a good relationship. Translating the cultivation method was just a slight effort. Just based on the talent and comprehension that Chu Xiu had displayed just now, it was worth his investment. Chu Xiu did not even think about it before saying, Then I'll have to trouble Master Yi. Not to mention that he wasn't worried about Yi Buxian secretly learning it. Even if Yi Buxian directly made a copy of the cultivation method, he wouldn't be worried. Even if two people from the same sect learned the same cultivation method, the effects would be different. Take Chu Xiu's heaven-extinguishing earth, annihilating oblivion killing fist for example. There were many people in the pugilistic world who knew it, but when Chu Xiu used it, it had a unique martial rhythm that belonged to him. The Great Black Heavenly Demon Cult's cultivation method was the same. He had first obtained the true martial intent of the world-annihilating flame from the statue of Shiva. Therefore, in the entire pugilistic world, he was the only one who could truly understand the true martial intent within. In fact, he wasn't even worried that Yi Buxian would translate it unintentionally or intentionally, because the feeling of the true martial intent was the most reliable. Chapter 9:21. Translating a cultivation technique wasn't a difficult task for Yi Buxian. It only took about 2 hours for Yi Buxian to write out the translated cultivation technique for Chu Xiu. Letting out a long sigh, Yi Buxian said, This cultivation technique is the core secret technique of the Great Black Heavenly Demon Sect. It's hard to say the name after the translation, but according to the customs of the Kunlun Devil Cult, it's more appropriate to call it the Great Black Heavenly Demon Technique. There are many records regarding the Great Black Heavenly Demon Sect, or rather, records regarding the Sanskrit religion, which allowed me to gain something. The Sixth Demon Sect is indeed a part of the ancient Sanskrit religion. The Great Black Heavenly Demon Sect is a Sanskrit religion, and the Great Black Heavenly Demon Palace in Shiva Temple is one of the incarnations of Shiva. And the Sixth Demon Sect's predecessor is the Sixth Demon Palace in Shiva Temple. The Sixth Demon is also one of the incarnations of Shiva. With regards to finding out the origin of his sect, Yi Buxian only felt a sense of satisfaction from solving a riddle, but he wasn't really excited about it. In the ancient times, the people of the Sixth Demon Palace were all dead. It was later people who discovered the ruins and built the sixth demon sect. So in reality, there wasn't much of a connection between the two, and Wuxia wasn't interested in finding an ancestor of the ancient times either. At this time, Wuxia flipped to the last page of the ancient book and said doubtfully, "There's something like this on the last page of the ancient book." There aren't any words or annotations on it, and looking at the material, it seems to have been added in later and rebound. I can't tell what it is. Chu Xiu took a look. The thing that Wuxia was talking about was a painting. In fact, it couldn't even be considered a painting. It was a very strange thing. At a rough glance, it looked like a few irregular circles of bubbles squeezed together. However, upon closer inspection, these circles of bubbles were marked with various points and lines. There seemed to be a pattern to them. Although Chu Xiu could not understand them, he had a vague feeling that he could not understand them. Unable to guess what it was, Chu Xiu didn't delve too deeply into it. He planned to take it back and study it slowly. "Many thanks, Master Yi." Wuxia smiled. "No need to be so polite, Official Chu. You and I are both from the demonic lineage, so this small matter is nothing." After chatting a bit more with Wuxia, the two said their goodbyes and left. It had to be said that Wuxia, or perhaps the entire Sixth Heavenly Devil sect, was very smart. When you don't have the strength, you don't pick a side. What do you mean by being neutral? That's just courting death. However, if you maintained a neutral stance after gaining strength, then you would become the target of both sides. The Sixth Heavenly Demon Sect was located far away in the South China Sea. They rarely participated in the disputes of the Central Plains, so the bright demons and the hidden demons didn't have any ill feelings towards them. In addition, the other party was strong enough, so both sides were even more unwilling to offend such a person. Wuxia had even more good karma. It was said that he had a good relationship with Eastern Emperor Tai. Right now, Chu Xiu owed him a favor. In the future, if Chu Xiu truly took charge of the Yinma clan, this favor would be worth a lot of money. If Chu Xiu were to die prematurely, it wouldn't matter. Anyway, he wouldn't lose anything. After returning to the Jianghu Hall, Chu Xiu just called Mei Qinglian and the others to ask if there was anything important. Then he went into seclusion. After Wuxia had translated the Great Black Sky Demon skill, Chu Xiu was prepared to cultivate it. It wasn't difficult to cultivate this skill, because Chu Xiu had already obtained the true meaning of Shiva's martial path from the statue of Shiva and seen the apocalyptic fire. Now that he was cultivating the Great Black Sky Demon skill, it was a matter of course. The Great Black Sky Demon God was one of Shiva's incarnations. It was in charge of destruction, and its form was the three-eyed, four-armed one in the temple. It could cultivate the apocalyptic fire, and its power was incomparably domineering. As for Chu Xiu's Triple City Annihilation Arrow, it was a secret skill of the Great Black Sky Demon skill, and also an extremely powerful one. After more than a month, Chu Xiu had more or less mastered the Great Black Sky Demon skill. Looking at the drawing on the last page of the book, Chu Xiu thought for a moment, then sent for Grandmaster Yuanji. Among the people under Chu Xiu, when it came to miscellaneous knowledge, no one could compare to this unorthodox divination grandmaster. When Chu Xiu sent for Grandmaster Yuanji, he was in a brothel, hugging a girl and watching her dance. As he watched, he stared at the girl's slender waist, wondering if he should redeem the girl. During this period of time, Grandmaster Yuanji could be said to be very comfortable. He was originally a Northern Yen person. Previously, he was the #1 fortune teller of the Northern Yen and had a great reputation in the Northern Yen. It was only because of Niren Long that he was forced to leave the Northern Yen. Now that he was back, it could be said that he was returning to his hometown with glory. Moreover, compared to his previous reputation as the #1 fortune teller, he now had the backing of someone. Other warriors of the Jianghu Hall had to go out and suppress the martial arts of the Northern Yen to prevent some people from causing trouble and maintaining order. Although they were not too busy, they still had things to do. However, Grandmaster Yuanji was a fortune teller. Naturally, he would not do things like fighting and killing. Therefore, he returned to his old profession in Yanjing City, which was fortune-telling. Of course, it was not cheap. Chu Xiu knew all this, but he did not stop them. As long as his subordinates maintained absolute loyalty and execution ability, he did not care about anything else. Of course, Grandmaster Yuanji was also very tactful. He paid a high price for fortune-telling for the high officials and nobles in Yanjing City, but he did not charge a single cent for fortune-telling for the people of the Jianghu Hall. Previously, the 13th prince of the northern Yan, Xiang Chong, came to find him for fortune-telling. He actually asked him to tell if he had the appearance of a real dragon. This almost scared Grandmaster Yuanji. How could fortune-telling be done so casually? How could it be done so casually? Fortunately, Mei Qinglian had arrived in time, which allowed him to escape this calamity. However, Mei Qinglian also made it very difficult for him. Mei Qinglian also asked him to tell her fortune, but Mei Qinglian actually asked Yuanji to tell her marriage. Yuanji was too embarrassed to say that he had predicted that Mei Qinglian had the fate of a jinx to her husband. Ordinary people could not control her. Therefore, Grandmaster Yuanji could only say a lot of good words, which sent Mei Qinglian away. At this time, hearing Chu Xiu's summon, Grandmaster Yuanji did not care about her small waist. He immediately let go of the girl in his arms and went to see Chu Xiu. When Chu Xiu saw Grandmaster Yuanji panting and running over, he wondered, "What have you been doing? Are you not in the Jianghu Hall?" Grandmaster Yuanji smiled awkwardly. "I went to the martial arts practice field to cultivate. Although it was useless, I took it as a way to strengthen my body." Chu Xiu did not care. He handed the strange pattern to Grandmaster Yuanji and told him about the Mahakala demon cult. Then he asked, "Can you tell what this thing is?" The Mahakala demon cult placed it on the last page of their cultivation manual. Obviously, this thing is also extremely important to them. Grandmaster Yuanji took a deep breath, and the expression on his face became solemn. The things that Chu Xiu told him challenged his worldview. Among them, there were also some secrets from ancient times and so on. Grandmaster Yuanji looked at it for a long time before saying, "Official Chu, to be honest, I have never seen this thing, but I have some guesses." "Feel free to say it." Grandmaster Yuanji said, "Official Chu, do you think the world we are in is round or round?" This was not the Earth of Chu Xiu's previous life. This world was actually very strange. The West Pole was an uninhabited desert, the North Pole was a wasteland, the South Barbarian was a mountain and bordered the sea, and the East Pole was a sea. It was said that a powerhouse once built a huge ship and headed to the South Sea. In the beginning, there were countless islands and many overseas martial artists. However, as he headed further south, there were endless storms that even tore his ship apart. He relied on his powerful cultivation to tread on the water, but at the end of the South Sea, there was only a boundless abyss cliff that devoured the seawater. It was as though there was no end to it. That was the end of the world. Of course, this was only a legend. No one would be so bored as to spend half of their life to take a look at the end of the world. Therefore, in response to Grandmaster Yuanji's question, Chu Xiu pondered for a while and said, "Now it seems that it is round." Grandmaster Yuanji said, "About that, it's both right and wrong. We fortune-tellers like to study such things, which is why we had some guesses before. It said that the world we are in is round, round and square, but is there a sky beyond this sky? My lord, take a look at these round things. If they are skies, then our world is within them. However, there are other skies beyond the skies, and within the skies, there is another world. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 skies surround each other and form another circle, while the outside world is another boundless sky, forming another round sky. Based on the clues we have now, the major sects of ancient times came up with the plan to split open the skies before the calamity came. In that case, they must have broken through this layer of the sky and gone to another. Moreover, the fact that members of the Black Sky Demon cult could return from that heaven meant that these heavens were connected to each other. I don't understand the various lines and nodes in the pattern, but it's clear that they are the key to the connection between the skies. Having said all that in a single breath, Grandmaster Yuanji breathed a long sigh of relief. Those things were rather shocking, and even if he had deduced everything, he would not dare to say that everything he thought was correct. Therefore, he paused for a moment before saying, Official Chu, these are just my guesses. They cannot be taken seriously without evidence. Chu Xiu nodded, stroking his chin. While it was all Grandmaster Yuanji's guesses, he felt that his analysis was not far from the truth. Moreover, the role of the Sky Gate was also very suspicious. The sky-piercing key could traverse space, and while the Sky Gate had not appeared in the world for a long time, it was to search for the sky-piercing key each time it did. Did that not mean that they were already aware of those secrets? In fact, even the name of the Sky Gate was very suspicious. Before this, Chu Xiu had thought that the Sky Gate meant that they were very powerful and stood on a high pedestal, which was why they were arrogant enough to call themselves the Sky Gate. Now, it seemed that the Sky Gate was literally a door that could reach the heavens. Chapter 9:22. After Master Yuanji left, Chu Xiu did not continue to think about heaven, because it was useless to think about it. Although he knew that the sky-reaching key was related to going to other heaven, and he also believed that the strange map recorded the location of other heaven, it was useless because he could not understand it. Since he found that the sky-reaching key could pass through the green space, Chu Xiu had tried to use it in other places, but it was useless because he could not understand it. This thing was only effective in the green space, where the space was weak. Although he suspected that Elysium knew something, the gap between him and Elysium was too big. He had no clue about investigating Elysium. Even if he had, it would be suicide for Chu Xiu to investigate Elysium rashly. So since there was no progress, what was the point of thinking about all this nonsense? He might as well continue to practice. Chu Xiu had already touched the threshold of the spiritual cultivation realm with real fire, so he had been thinking about breaking through this bottleneck. Refining his body with real fire could make Chu Xiu comparable to a normal warrior in the spiritual cultivation realm with real fire. If he reached the spiritual cultivation realm with real fire, the two would be superimposed. This was a realm that even Qinqing Di had not reached. Could he be comparable to the metaphysic realm of heaven and earth? Maybe after he finished practicing, he should ask Shang Tianliang for advice and see what the lower limit of the metaphysic realm of heaven and earth was. While Chu Xiu was concentrating on practicing, there was a change in the Northern Yen. In one of the chambers of the Northern Yen Imperial Palace, Xiang Long was lying on the bed. His appearance was so haggard that he did not look like a human anymore. Only a layer of skin was left on him. Compared to when Chu Xiu saw him a few months ago, he was a completely different person. An imperial physician trembled beside the bed and said, "Your Majesty, your body is too weak now. You can't use strong medicine. You can only take some warm medicine and rest in peace." This imperial physician was also very helpless. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Xiang Long would not be able to hold on for much longer. However, what else could he do? He couldn't possibly tell Xiang Long that His Majesty could now wait for his death in peace. He could heal other illnesses and injuries, but when it came to lifespan, he really couldn't do anything about it. Xiang Long raised his hand and said, "I don't want to take medicine anymore." That imperial physician was so frightened that he fell to his knees. However, Xiang Long weakly waved his hand and said, "Get up. This has nothing to do with you. We know that we do not have much longer to live. You can leave now." When the imperial physician left, trembling, Xiang Long stared blankly in front, not knowing what was going on. Eunuch Han, who was beside Xiang Long, said softly, "Your Majesty, let it go. Perhaps after a period of rest, your body will recover." Xiang Long didn't respond to Eunuch Han's comforting words. After a while, he said in a hoarse voice, "We don't accept this. I had spent my life building the Yen dynasty to build the Yen dynasty, and how Chang, Yen, how, Tian Qi, Yen how not to how Yen not, but Chang to emperor, dynasty, while I was still reading the how, Yen was sleeping with a Yen. If you give me Eastern Qi, within 10 years, I will be able to conquer the world and create a truly prosperous empire." Xiang Long's voice was filled with unwillingness and unwillingness. Some people were born with everything, but they didn't cherish it. The vast Eastern Qi, the fertile Central Plains, was now in the hands of that good-for-nothing, Lu Haocheng. How could he swallow this insult? "Go, Get the North Vanquishing King here, Xianglong suddenly said. Eunuch Han hesitated for a moment, but he still followed Xianglong's instructions and called for the North Vanquishing King. After a quarter of an hour, a stalwart middle-aged man walked into the bedroom. This middle-aged man wore an embroidered dragon robe. Not only was his figure stalwart and tall, his appearance was masculine and handsome, and he possessed an extraordinary aura. In front of him, Xianglong seemed even weaker and weaker. Xianglong looked at the middle-aged man, and the middle-aged man looked back at him, but neither of them said a word. After a long while, the middle-aged man couldn't help but say, "Why did you call me over? Is it so that I can watch you die here? I've said it before, after your death, I will only drink and celebrate. I will not mourn for you, brother." This middle-aged man was an expert of the Northern Yen royal family, the person in charge of the Imperial Worship Hall, the North Vanquishing King, Xiangchong. The Northern Yen was located in the north, but Xiangchong's title was the North Vanquishing King. One could imagine his importance in the Northern Yen royal family. The Northern Yen royal family's strongest military organization, the Imperial Worship Hall, was in his hands. He was also the only one in Xianglong's generation who had reached the true Fire Spirit Ascension realm. Of course, he also had another identity. He was Xianglong's younger brother, born from the same mother. But now, the way he looked at Xianglong was filled with mockery, disgust, and even hatred. Xianglong smiled bitterly and said, "You still hate me?" In front of Xiangchong, Xianglong didn't address himself as emperor. In front of him, Xianglong was not an emperor, but a failed brother. Xiangchong sneered and said, "Hate? For the sake of this *T throne, you killed the crown prince and the others. It's understandable. When the three of us were young, the crown prince used to bully and humiliate us. But in the end, why did you kill our eldest brother? Is the throne that important to you? Look at you now, fighting and scheming against others, plotting against each other. At the end of the day, decades of time are nothing but dust. Is there any meaning to it?" There was no expression on Xianglong's face, which only had a layer of skin left. He said coolly, "Do you still think that I killed our eldest brother? I did it for the sake of Great Yen. If Great Yen had a foundation like Eastern Qi, I'd rather be an idle king, helping my eldest brother to come up with strategies. After helping him ascend to the throne, I would be like you, concentrating on the cultivation of martial arts. But what was Great Yen like at that time? It was surrounded by enemies on all sides, in a precarious situation. Great Yen was not Eastern Qi. Even though Eastern Qi had produced a few useless idiots, Eastern Qi was still Eastern Qi. But if Great Yen made a mistake, we would be doomed eternally. My eldest brother did not deserve the throne, but he refused to let go. What else could I do? Do I have to sit back and watch my eldest brother bring Great Yen into the abyss? If that happens, we will all die." Xianglong sighed when he saw that Xiangchong's eyes were still filled with disdain and hatred. He did not explain further. "You're right about one thing," he said weakly, "I'm about to die. I know you hate me, but you can't possibly hate Great Yen too, can you? Before I die, I'm going to lay out a trap, which can at least ensure the stability of Great Yen for decades. At that time, I'll be able to leave with a peace of mind." Xiangchong frowned and said, "What trap? And who are you going to pass the throne to?" Xianglong hesitated for a brief moment, then said in a low voice, "Xiangchong." "Why not Xiangli?" asked Xiangchong curiously. He was the second prince, and the ancestral teaching of Great Yen was to establish the eldest brother first. Moreover, for so many years, Xiangli had always thought that he would be the future emperor of Great Yen. Everyone in the imperial court thought so, and many of them had thrown themselves into Xiangli's service. Do you know how much internal strife Great Yan's imperial court will fall into by doing this? Xiangchong laughed coldly and said, "Don't tell me you made Xiangchong the crown prince just because he looks like you when you were young? Back then, you did not get the throne properly. So, are you going to let your son break the ancestral teaching of Great Yen as well?" Xianglong did not pay any attention to Xiangchong's sarcasm. "It's exactly because Xiangli has always thought that he is the crown prince that I don't want to pass the throne to him," he said coolly. They are both my sons and their abilities are almost the same. How can I play around with such an important matter just because of my own preference? The powers in Xiang Li's hands are too complicated. For so many years, I've been paying attention to him, watching him collect all the good and bad powers. But with his overall strength, there is no way he can control these powers. He thinks he is the chosen one, and that's why he has been collecting these powers without any scruples. You should know that the powers you have now will have to return them when you ascend to the throne in the future. In comparison, Xiang Chong is much simpler. If I give him the throne, he will cherish it even more. But the powers in Xiang Chong's hands are weaker. How can you guarantee that he can sit firmly on the throne in the future? Xiang Chong was taken aback. Then he sneered and said, "You want me to help your son sit firmly on the throne? Have you lost your mind because of your illness?" Xiang Long cleared his throat and said in a low voice, "Third brother, I know you hate me, but I also know that you can't let go of Great Yen either. Otherwise, with your overall strength, how could you be willing to sit quietly in the Imperial Sinecure Hall for so many years?" Among the descendants of the Northern Yen Imperial clan, Xiang Wu was undoubtedly the most outstanding among the younger generation. And Xiang Long's generation was Xiang Chong, who stood before him. Xiang Long knew that Xiang Chong hated him deeply, but he still conferred him the title of Northern King, and gave him the command of the most important organization, the Imperial Sinecure Hall. It was because he knew that no matter how much Xiang Chong hated him, he would not do anything to him. Although Xiang Chong hated him, he also cared about the Northern Yen Imperial clan, and he would not do anything that would harm the Northern Yen Imperial clan. Xiang Long said in a deep voice, "Third brother, I don't have long to live, but the troubles of Great Yen have not been solved. I know you hate me, but I believe you. Help me stabilize Great Yen, or should I say, help the Xiang clan stabilize Great Yen." Xiang Chong remained silent for a moment, then suddenly asked, "What do you want to do?" Upon hearing Xiang Chong's question, a smile emerged on Xiang Long's face. He knew that Xiang Chong had agreed. Although Great Yen seems to be peaceful now, it is riddled with holes. Within it, there is the Martial Suppression Hall, a power that can't be shaken off. I can't control Chu Xiu, and although Xiang Chong has a good relationship with him, I can't control him either. Outside, there is Great Yan's Jianghu, which has caused a great disaster. The Great Light Temple is located in the Yen Kingdom, but they have never considered themselves as a citizen of the Yen Kingdom. Those monks have no respect for the emperor, and they are lawless. Further away, although Eastern Qi has a mediocre Lu Haochang, with the resources of Eastern Qi, if they are replaced by a slightly capable emperor, they will definitely be the nightmare of Great Yen. With the internal and external troubles, Great Yen is already in a mess. So, I will make it even more chaotic, and only then can we win in the chaos. Xiang Long fixed his eyes on Xiang Chong and said in a deep voice, "Third brother, in the entire Great Yen, I only trust you. Help me, Xiang clan, stabilize Great Yen, and when I'm dead in the future, I'll personally go down there and apologize to my imperial brother." Chapter 923. In Eastern Qi's Chunyang Dao sect, Xiang Chong, who had disguised himself and came here secretly, was feeling uneasy. Xiang Long's plan was too big and his plan was crazy. Once it failed, the Northern Yen would be in a mess. However, if Xiang Long's plan was really carried out and he succeeded, the Northern Yan's strength would skyrocket. At the same time, it would create a strong yet fragile balance. When he first heard of Xiang Long's plan, Xiang Chong's first reaction was that Xiang Long was crazy. However, Xiang Chong agreed in the end. As for why he agreed, perhaps it was because he hated Xiang Long for disregarding his brotherhood for the sake of the throne. However, he had to admit that the Northern Yan's current scale was all thanks to Xiang Long's governance and planning. He was not a good brother or a good father, but he was a qualified emperor. Xiang Chong was just a martial artist. However, decades ago, he did not have the strength of the spiritual refinement state with real fire. Even if he had, a real fire refinement state would not be able to save the Northern Yen. So now, even if he thought Xiang Long's plan was crazy, he still nodded and agreed. He even wanted to do these things personally. This was because only he could obtain Xianglong's absolute trust. Only his strength and status could guarantee the completion of these tasks. The Chunyang Dao sect was his second stop. His first stop was the Great Light Temple. The reason why Xiang Chong went to the Great Light Temple was simple. According to Xianglong, he invited the Great Light Temple to come to Yanjing City to build a branch temple. He also used the excuse that there were many bandits and villains in the northern Yan to ask the monks of the Great Light Temple to come forward and suppress these people. Xianglong was extremely afraid of the Great Light Temple. However, he took the initiative to lead the Great Light Temple. In fact, it was because he was even more afraid of Chu Xiu. All along, Xianglong knew that he wanted Chu Xiu to deal with the Great Light Temple. In the end, Chu Xiu was only pretending to comply but secretly slacking off. He could not do anything about it. Since it did not work on Chu Xiu's side, then he would bring in the Great Light Temple and drive the tiger to swallow the wolf. He would disperse the power of the subduing martial hall. With Chu Xiu's personality, he did not believe that Chu Xiu could endure it. As for the Great Guangming Temple, they were not idiots. They naturally knew what Xianglong was thinking, but they still agreed. There was only one reason: Yanjing City was the core of the entire northern Yan. The Great Guangming Temple was extremely strict in recruiting disciples, but it was precisely because of this that they needed a large number of disciples to be screened. Now that Xianglong had opened up the core of the northern Yan to the Great Guangming Temple, the Great Guangming Temple could not refuse. Although Xianglong had already guessed that Su Yun and the other upper echelons of the Temple of Great Light would definitely request their disciples to focus on teaching and not have any conflict with Chu Xiu, Xianglong believed that conflict would happen sooner or later. The reason was very simple. It was impossible for a Buddha and a demon to coexist peacefully under the same roof. Xiang Chong wanted to say that Xianglong was playing with fire. This kind of behavior might be rejecting the tiger at the front door and inviting the wolf at the back door. However, Xianglong's next plan was even more daring. This was no longer playing with fire, it was directly roasting himself on the fire. The reason why he came to the Chunyang Dao sect was also very simple. He also wanted to bring in the Chunyang Dao sect into Yanjing City. Taoism and Buddhism could not coexist, and they kept each other in check. As the local tyrant of the northern Yan, the Great Guangming Temple would undoubtedly have another enemy and an additional layer of risk of conflict. Moreover, Xianglong had already calculated everything. The probability of the Chunyang Dao sect agreeing was more than 90%. The reason was very simple. The Chunyang Dao sect did not have an easy time in Eastern Qi. There were two major Taoist sects in Eastern Qi. The Chunyang Dao sect was not well liked due to its own way of doing things. It could not compare to the peaceful real martial arts sect. Most importantly, because of Ning Xuanji's halo, the real martial arts sect was now the national religion of Eastern Qi. With the support of the country's power, even if the real martial arts sect's current strength was not too strong, and although Lu Changlu was a good person, he was just a good person, at least the real martial arts sect did not have to worry about the decline of the next generation. On the other hand, the Chunyang Dao sect was in danger and needed a new breakthrough. Therefore, after Xiang Chong personally came to the Chunyang Dao sect and told the Chunyang Dao sect about this, Ling Yunzi, who was in seclusion, personally agreed to let Shi Yunzi bring the older generation of Chunyang Dao sect to northern Yan and establish the Chunyang Dao sect's branch in northern Yan. After coming out of the Chunyang Dao sect, Xiang Chong let out a long sigh. He had to admit that Xianglong had been the emperor for decades. At least in terms of thinking about people, he was much better than him, a martial artist who had been practicing martial arts for decades. The integration of the three branches of Taoism, Buddhism, and Devil could be considered to have balanced the internal problems. As for the external problems, Xiang Chong still had to go to the East Sea to meet the people of the Jiangshan Pavilion. The Jiangshan Pavilion was one of the 6 sects of human harmony. In fact, it was rarely active in the Central Plains, and its behavior was not too much related to the sections. To be precise, it was an organization to restore the country. It was called the Grassland Sect, but in fact, it was a fallen royal family. In the past, there were many small countries in the Central Plains, and countless countries had been destroyed. The Jiangshan Pavilion was formed by the royal family of a small country in the past. Because it carried the wealth of a country, although it was a small country, it was the most powerful among the 6 sections. In these years, the Jiangshan Pavilion was very smart. Or it could be said that they accidentally avoided the disputes in the Central Plains. Instead, they developed their strength at the junction of the East Sea and the coast, and carried out the trade between the Central Plains and overseas. Xiang Long did not know where he got the news that the Jiangshan Pavilion had even controlled a few islands overseas, and their strength was definitely not weak. What Xiang Chong needed to do was to go to the Jiangshan Pavilion and persuade the Jiangshan Pavilion to move all their strength to the Central Plains. Xiang Long could give the Jiangshan Pavilion a promise to restore the country. The word, restore the country, could be said to be the obsession of the generations of the Jiangshan Pavilion. However, as the strength of the Jiangshan Pavilion grew, the matter of restoring the country became more and more desperate. Because now was not the chaotic world of 100 years ago. There were many small countries in the world. Now, even the weakest of the 3 countries, West Chu, was not something they could shake. Xiang Long said that he wanted to help the Jiangshan Pavilion restore the country. This was not to find trouble for himself, but to find an ally to resist the Eastern Qi. What Xiang Long wanted to give to the Jiangshan Pavilion was not people, nor things, but a piece of land. A piece of land that could allow the Jiangshan Pavilion to restore the country. That place was Wei County. Although the Northern Yan had ruled Wei County for decades, in fact, the Northern Yan had never really controlled Wei County. The people of Wei County had never acknowledged the Northern Yan. Therefore, for the Northern Yan, this piece of land was more important than its reputation. It could even be a trouble. If Xiang Long had time, he could completely digest Wei County slowly. Unfortunately, he did not have much time. Therefore, it was worth it to use such a troublesome piece of land in exchange for the support of the Jiangshan Pavilion. Moreover, Wei County was on the border between the Northern Yan and the Eastern Qi. If the Eastern Qi attacked, the Wei County occupied by the Jiangshan Pavilion would be an excellent buffer zone. Compared to convincing the Great Guangming Temple and the Chunyang Dao sect, it was undoubtedly much easier to convince the Jiangshan Pavilion. As long as Xiang Chong stated his conditions, the Jiangshan Pavilion had no reason to refuse. When Xiang Chong walked out of the Jiangshan Pavilion, he suddenly sighed tiredly. In the past, he deeply hated Xiang Long, thinking that he was a heartless and cold-blooded person who killed his own brother, who was born from the same mother, for the sake of the throne. But now, he suddenly understood Xiang Long. After so many years, the things that Xiang Long had to bear were much heavier than he expected. Compared to Xiang Long, he did not need to consider so many things. He only needed to take a large number of cultivation resources from the imperial family's hall of offerings and steadily improve his cultivation. Although it was boring, it was extremely easy. Just as Xiang Chong was planning these things from the Northern Yan to the East Sea, Chu Xiu was still in seclusion in the Jianghu Hall. This was not because Chu Xiu was not well informed, but because Xiang Long was too cautious. Just as he said, he did not trust anyone now. He only trusted Xiang Chong, his younger brother who hated him deeply. All of this was planned by Xiang Chong. Not even the slightest bit of information was leaked. At this moment, Mei Qinglian knocked on the door of Chu Xiu's seclusion. There's something to do. Trouble might come again. Chu Xiu stood up and stretched his muscles. Then he said, "What trouble is it this time? Is it from the Yinma clan or the Northern Yan clan?" With the strength of the Jianghu Hall, Mei Qinglian would not disturb him if it was a small matter. Now, it seemed that it was not a small matter. Mei Qinglian said, "It's a matter of the Northern Yan clan. Xianglong Zhao, you go to the court." Chu Xiu was taken aback. "You want me to attend court? What does he want?" Since Chu Xiu joined the Northern Yan Imperial Court, he had not even gone to the court once. The Northern Yan Imperial Court was in charge of the court, while the Jianghu Hall was in charge of Jianghu. The two had nothing to do with each other. What was the use of him going to the court? Mei Qinglian shrugged and said, "Who knows? His Majesty might not be able to hold on for long. Who knows what he will do before he dies? It's better to be cautious. Bring old Master Shang with you when you go to the court. Anyway, Xiang Long did not say how many people he could bring. Chu Xiu nodded. In fact, he was not worried. With his strength, he was not afraid of Xiang Long playing any tricks. Of course, in the eyes of many, the Northern Yan Imperial Court represented by Xiang Long was the net, and Chu Xiu was just a fish. But even if he was a fish, Chu Xiu was a man-eating shark. An ordinary net could not catch him. Of course, for the sake of caution, Chu Xiu went to find Shang Tianliang and asked him to go to the court with him. After coming to the Northern Yan, Shang Tianliang's life was very comfortable. For him, as long as he left the Green Metropolis, any place was heaven. Chu Xiu found a place to help them rebuild Merchant City. So during this time, Shang Tianliang performed his duties as the castellan, leading the people of Merchant City to rebuild their homes. In his free time, he cultivated and continued to familiarize himself with the power of the mysterious heaven and earth realm. When Chu Xiu came to find him, Shang Tianliang was a little unhappy because Chu Xiu had delayed his planting. However, there were still some people in Merchant City eating sand in Green Metropolis. Even if he was unwilling, he had to go to the palace with Chu Xiu. Chapter 924. In the Northern Yan Imperial Court, there were three distinct factions: the civil officials, the military generals, and the Xiang Li, Xiang Chong, and other members of the royal family. Of course, there were those who did not sit next to each other. Chu Xiu was one of them. Xiang Wu was also one of them. He was a general of the West Hill Army, but he was also a member of the Northern Yan royal family. Therefore, he could not even stand on one side. He leaned against a dragon pillar and yawned. Obviously, he did not attend court often. After a long while, Xiang Long walked in with the help of Eunuch Han. Seeing Xiang Long's current state, Chu Xiu could not help but shake his head. Xiang Long was already at the end of his rope. Chu Xiu would not be surprised even if he were to kick the bucket in the next moment. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Everyone kneeled down below. Only a few elders of the Xiang royal family with extremely high seniority and people of extremely high status like Beigong Bailey merely bowed to him. On Chu Xiu's side, Mei Qinglian and Shang Tianliang had come. Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian would at least put on an act and salute him. However, Shang Tianliang was looking at the sky and did not even bother to put on an act. Born in the Green Capital, he did not understand how a dying person could still sit in such a high position. If there were people in the same state as Xiang Long in the Green Capital, they would have committed suicide long ago to save themselves from wasting resources and implicating others. "Rise, all of you," Xiang Long said weakly. He did not keep them in suspense. He sat on the dragon throne and said, "Today, I have gathered everyone here to announce a few things." Hearing this, everyone immediately put on a solemn expression. Xiang Long had already weakened to this extent, so it was easy to imagine what he would announce next. Among the Northern Yan royal family, Xiang Li clenched his fists tightly. He did not even dare to raise his head. Right now, he was the most nervous person here. He had waited for the position of crown prince for more than a decade. In these years, apart from the title, his power was no different from that of a crown prince. If not for Xiang Chong, he would have long been the crown prince. Xiang Li subconsciously turned to look at Xiang Chong. Compared to Xiang Li's nervousness, Xiang Chong seemed to be rather calm at this moment. Everyone wanted to be the crown prince, especially with Xiang Long's current condition. If anyone could become the crown prince, it probably wouldn't take long for them to officially ascend the throne. He knew that in terms of prestige and personal strength, he was not inferior to Xiang Li, but his only advantage was Xiang Long's love. Even if he, Xiang Li, had a great advantage, those things could be taken away by Xiang Long with a single word. Therefore, it was useless for him to worry now. Whether he lived or died depended on Xiang Long's decision. On the dragon throne, Xiang Long's gaze swept past Xiang Li and Xiang Chong. In the end, he sighed and said, "I've decided to appoint Chung Chong as the crown prince." The crowd burst into an uproar as soon as he said that. Xiang Li felt as if all his strength had been sucked out, and he almost fell to the ground. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth, lowering his head so that no one could see his expression. But in fact, the expression on his face was extremely ferocious, as if he wanted to eat someone. He refused to accept this. Not convinced. Anyone could be the crown prince, but why Xiang Chong? He had worked hard for more than 10 years. Just because he looked like his father when he was young, he could have all this? What Xiang Li was unwilling to accept was that his careful and meticulous planning had actually been defeated by a face. How could he swallow this insult? How could he accept this? Chu Xiu, on the other hand, felt that this was very normal. Because in the original plot, the one who obtained the crown prince position in the end was the weaker Xiang Chong. Xiang Li's power was indeed not weak, but he had neglected one point. For a great ruler like Xiang Long, most of the time, it was the father who was strong and the son who was weak. If Xiang Long wanted to give something to you, it was only a matter of a word. If he didn't want to give it to you, no matter how much you schemed, he would still slap you to the ground. At this moment, Xiang Chong was also stunned. His face was also filled with disbelief. Although he knew that he was favored by Xiang Long, he did not expect that one day, this favor would allow him to inherit the throne. After all, in terms of strength, he was much younger than Xiang Li. Although he had fantasized about this day, he did not dare to imagine that the throne would fall into his hands. At this moment, the other Northern Yan generals and members of the royal family were also discussing this matter. To be honest, they did not expect that Xiang Chong would become the crown prince in the end. Previously, they had always thought that this person would be Xiang Li, so they had invested in him in advance and befriended him. But now, at this time, because of a word from Xiang Long, the crown prince had to be replaced. This was unacceptable to them. Looking around, Xiang Long coughed, and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. He did not say a word, but after feeling Xiang Long's gaze, everyone immediately quieted down. Although Xiang Long looked like he was about to die, he had been in charge of the Northern Yan for decades. His prestige was still there, and not many people dared to challenge him in front of him. When the hall was completely quiet, Xiang Long said, "This is only the first thing. There are still a few things that I need to announce. First, I feel that the Northern Yan Jianghu is too chaotic. So I sent people to the Great Light Temple and the Chunyangdao sect to invite the eminent monks of the Great Light Temple and the Taoist priests of the Chunyangdao sect to come to Yanjing City to establish a branch. With the protection of both Taoism and Buddhism, I believe that the Northern Yan land will be more prosperous." As soon as this was said, Chu Xiu's expression, which was originally watching a show, suddenly became gloomy. Was Xiang Long preparing to break down and rebuild? Inviting the Great Light Temple and the Chunyangdao sect was clearly to target Chu Xiu and the Jianghu Hall. The courtiers present were not stupid. They quickly figured out the crux of the matter. This was also what Xiang Long was best at. The combination of vertical and horizontal, driving the tiger to swallow the wolf. Xiang Long relied on these few moves to defeat Eastern Qi. In the past, when the Northern Yan was weak, they used the power of the Northern Yan Jianghu to attack Eastern Qi. When the Northern Yan Jianghu was stable, they brought in Chu Xiu to suppress the Northern Yan Jianghu. Chu Xiu alone was notorious, and there were not many in the Northern Yan Jianghu who scolded the imperial court. Seeing that Chu Xiu was too big to be shaken off, Xiang Long actually brought in the forces of Taoism and Buddhism to suppress Chu Xiu. The three branches of Taoism, Buddhism, and Diabolism gathered in Yanjing City. They could imagine what kind of scene it would be. Chaos. It would be a complete mess. If Xiang Long was still young, they would have confidence in him to solve all the problems and win in the chaos. However, the problem was that Xiang Long did not have many days left to live. Was he not afraid of getting into trouble by making such a big move? Before the crowd could react, Xiang Long continued, "At the same time, I have decided to give the land of Wei County to Jiangshan Pavilion. In a few days, people from Jiangshan Pavilion will come to Yanjing City. When Jiangshan Pavilion takes control of Wei County, I will agree to restore their country." The power of this sentence was even greater than the previous one. They didn't know how to describe Xiang Long anymore. The forces of the three countries had already reached a balance, but now Xiang Long wanted to create a fourth country. Was he not afraid of going overboard? Chu Xiu was silent at the side. He suddenly guessed what Xiang Long wanted to do. Previously he had threatened Xiang Long in front of him. Xiang Long had endured it for fear of harming the innocent. But now, it seemed that Xiang Long was really dying. Even if he wanted to endure it, he did not have the time. Therefore, at this juncture, Xiang Long decided to stake it all on one throw. He put all the internal and external conflicts and troubles in the light. Everyone would check and balance each other and weaken each other. In the end, they would even reach a delicate balance. The enmity between the three branches of Taoism, Buddhism, and Diabolism, as well as their worldviews, were not in the same pot. Hoping for them to coexist peacefully was more difficult than asking a pig to fly to heaven. Although the risk was great, Xiang Long couldn't care less anymore. After so many years, which of the things he did not have risks? The court was noisy, but no one objected. It should be said that even if there were people who had objections, they did not dare to say it. This was where Xiang Long's advantage lay. His reputation in the northern Yen was too high. It was so high that as long as he was alive, no one in the entire northern Yen imperial court would dare to say a word against him. At this moment, Xiang Long had already instructed Xiang Chong to take care of these matters. Only then did he inform the crowd. This was not a discussion, but a routine notice. Go and get the 9-dragon seal to strengthen Chong. We no longer have time, so let's simplify everything. As Xiang Long's voice fell, Xiang Chong and several elders of the Xiang royal family left together. A moment later, they carefully brought back an exquisite wooden box and placed it in the center of the hall. When the box was opened, it immediately shone with a golden light. 9 lifelike coiling dragons were engraved on it, and a powerful aura lingered in the hall. Even Shang Tianliang could feel a faint pressure from it. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes. He knew what the 9-dragon seal was. When the Northern Yen Empire had just been founded, all the master smiths of the Northern Yen were gathered. They even specially invited people from the Black Tortoise Gate and the Hall of Gods to forge this item together. The 9-dragon seal was not a weapon, but it was even more terrifying than a weapon. The 9-dragon seal that was forged by so many master smiths was not used directly. Every generation of the Xiang royal family had to give the 9-dragon seal their first drop of blood when they were born. This made it a treasure that only the bloodline of the Xiang family could wield. Moreover, the place where the 9-dragon seal was nurtured was not ordinary. It was in the northern Yen dragon vein. After being stored in the dragon vein for a long time, the 9-dragon seal had already fused with the northern Yen dragon vein. It could be considered as a derivative of the dragon vein. It could even be said that this item was the last trump card of the Northern Yen Empire, or even the entire Xiang royal family. Moreover, this item was not only in the Northern Yen Empire. Eastern Qi and Western Chu Empire should have it as well. However, it was not a seal but something else. The power of the dragon vein was so strong. As the ruler of the empire, how could he not make use of it? Chapter 925. The 9-dragon seal was the national treasure of the Xiang royal family of the Northern Yen. At this moment, Xiang Long had taken out the 9-dragon seal not only to add the mark of the 9-dragon seal on Xiang Chong, but also to intimidate him. As for who he was intimidating, everyone knew with a single glance that it was Shang Tianliang who stood beside Chu Xiu. If not for Shang Tianliang, Xiang Long might not have arranged all this in such a hurry. A heaven and earth elemental enlightenment cultivator was too powerful, so powerful that even a dynasty had to be cautious. City Lord Shang, if you were to go up against this 9-dragon seal, how confident are you? Chu Xiu secretly transmitted a message to him. Shang Tianliang stared at the 9-dragon seal for a long time, then said, I don't know. This thing was nurtured from the dragon vein. What it represented was the will of this world to begin with. I am still not used to the way you fight here. The power of heaven and earth that I can use is not as much as this external object. However, external objects are external objects after all. It depends on who uses them. If it is one of the stronger true fire spirit refinement state cultivators, I don't have much confidence. Among the 3 dynasties, even the weakest Western Chu had some resources. Otherwise, they would have been usurped by others long ago. The 9-dragon seal was the foundation of the Northern Yen, or even one of them. According to the Northern Yen custom, the crown prince would have the 9-dragon seal on his back. Because the 9-dragon seal contained the blood of the ancestors of the Xiang royal family, it represented the official recognition of the crown prince. Moreover, as long as the 9-dragon seal was imprinted on the body of a member of the Xiang royal family, it would form a certain connection with him. As long as he was within Yanjing City, if he was hurt, he would be protected by the power of the 9-dragon seal. This was to prevent the emperor from being assassinated. Although it didn't work every time, it had at least helped the previous Northern Yen emperors fend off many assassination attempts. Otherwise, with the extent of Xiang Long's hatred, he would probably need several martial artists in the true fire spirit refinement realm to guard him at all times to ensure his safety. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and suddenly sneered in his heart. Xiang Long was afraid. As the monarch of a country, Xiang Long actually used such a superficial method to threaten others. Xiang Long was obviously afraid. He was afraid that under his pressure he would turn hostile, and in the end, Northern Yen would be in a mess. In fact, Xiang Long was thinking too much. Chu Xiu was actually a person who knew his limits. Even with Shang Tianliang present, Chu Xiu would carefully evaluate the strength of both sides before deciding to fall out with Xiang Long. The Northern Yen was Xiang Long's Northern Yen, but it was also the territory that Chu Xiu had managed for such a long time. It was also Xiang Long's territory. Once the table was flipped, Chu Xiu's efforts would be Chu Xiu would be's clan. Dragon. Chu would Long Yen clan of Long Northern Yen belong to Long and Long of the Northern Yen. Long Chen, Su, Chen Jin Long Yen, King Long and Xiang, he said. As far as he knew, Chu Xiu was not someone who would swallow humiliation like this. What was he thinking? The plan had been laid out. Xiang Long did not care about what tricks Chu Xiu had up his sleeves. When the seal was complete, Xiang Chang's entire body was enveloped in a faint light. After a long while, the light completely disappeared into his body. Only then did Xiang Chong realize that he seemed to have really become the crown prince of the Northern Yen, the heir to the empire. Xiang Long said solemnly, "Chong, you are now the crown prince, but you are still young. In all aspects, you must listen to the opinions of the Northern Yen elites. They will assist you in governing the country, so I am not worried. I heard that you are very interested in martial arts. This time, I have also found a teacher for you." Everyone was slightly taken aback. At this time, Xiang Chong walked out and brought in a middle-aged man with a sword. It should be noted that this was the imperial court. Even generals like Beigong Bailey were not allowed to carry weapons. Chu Xiu would not go overboard. Although he had a weapon with him, he had placed the heavenly war case in a secret space box. However, this person was actually holding a sword so openly. His attitude could be said to be extremely arrogant. But although this middle-aged man was arrogant, he was extremely ordinary in other aspects. His aura was restrained, so his specific strength could not be seen. But Chu Xiu was sure that this man was definitely in the true fire spirit refinement realm. The reason was simple. If the other party's realm was lower than his, no matter how well he restrained his aura, Chu Xiu would still be able to see through him. This middle-aged man was only wearing a greenish-gray coarse short robe. There were even patches in some places. His appearance was also extremely ordinary, and his expression was dull. To be more accurate, it should be said that he was indifferent. It was as if the Emperor of Northern Yen and all the experts in the hall were all illusions to him. The only thing on him that seemed more luxurious was the sword in his hand. Although the blade of the sword was not seen, the scabbard was made from the skin of a giant beast in the sea. It could be used to enhance the sharpness of the weapon. A palm-sized piece of the scabbard was worth 10,000 taels of gold. Xiang Long said in a deep voice, "This is Mr. Kong Dongming, the sword sage of the Eastern Sea. From now on, he will be your teacher." As soon as these words were spoken, the entire audience was in an uproar. They all looked at Kong Dongming with astonishment. Chu Xiu transmitted his voice to Mei Qinglian. "Who is this? Is he famous? Why have I never heard of him?" Mei Qinglian said, It is normal that you have not heard of him. This sword sage of the Eastern Sea came to the Central Plains when you were in seclusion. He is so famous that even Wind Sweeping Tower does not dare to give him a ranking now, because who knows when it will be changed again. This person was born overseas and has always been traveling overseas. His swordsmanship is unfathomable. A month ago, he suddenly appeared in the Central Plains and challenged Yan Ji of the Storm Sword Mound alone. He defeated the enemy in 3 moves. He then went to the Forgotten Sword Hut and challenged the leader of the Sword Hut, Shen Baochen, and won. After that, he went to the Western Desert and challenged the leader of the Sword King City, Heavenly Sword, Shen Tianwang, and won. He did not go to the Hidden Sword Villa. Perhaps in his opinion, the Hidden Sword Villa was no longer worthy of his challenge. In a short period of time, he battled 3 major sword sects and won 3 consecutive battles. Kang Dongming even gained the reputation of being the #1 swordsman in the world. He was called the Sword Sage of the Eastern Sea. However, it is said that this person's tracks are hard to find and he has a strange personality. Other than the fact that he likes to challenge strong swordsmen, no one knows what he wants. Why is he relying on Xiang Long now? What Mei Qinglian and the others did not know was that part of the reason why Kang Dongming appeared in the Central Plains was because of Xiang Chong. When Xiang Chong went to Jiangshan Pavilion to negotiate, he happened to meet Kang Dongming. Kang Dongming was not a member of Jiangshan Pavilion. To be precise, he was a guest of Jiangshan Pavilion. A swordsman also needed to eat. Other than practicing swordsmanship, Kang Dongming knew nothing else in his life. Where did he get all the cultivation resources, including his sharp sharkskin scabbard? It was all earned by being a guest elder of the Rivers and Mountains Pavilion. Moreover, being a guest of Jiangshan Pavilion was very interesting. Only when he was penniless would he come to Jiangshan Pavilion and be a guest of Jiangshan Pavilion for a period of time. He would leave after receiving a certain amount of monthly salary. Therefore, Jiangshan Pavilion could not do anything to this guest of theirs. They even offered Kang Dongming a huge sum of money just to stay in Jiangshan Pavilion. However, Kang Dongming rejected them outright. When Xiang Chong arrived at Jiangshan Pavilion, he happened to meet Kang Dongming. No one knew what he said, but he managed to trick Kang Dongming into coming to the Central Plains. That was how Kang Dongming consecutively challenged 3 major sword sects in the Central Plains. Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and sized up Kang Dongming. However, this person still had a dull look on his face. It was as if he was daydreaming. This person was an extremely simple swordsman. He was even purer than some of the major sword sects in the world. In the past, the 5 major sword sects had fought for the position of the top sword sections. They had not given way to each other. They had even caused a great battle on Mount Fuyu, but no one had won. Now they had been challenged by an outsider. He had even earned the title of Sword Saint. This was a huge slap in the face. Faced with this result, the 3 sects could not say anything. Kang Dongming had challenged them in front of everyone. It was only a competition of swordsmanship. It did not involve the interests of any sections. Otherwise, with the power of the 3 sects, it would have been very easy for them to keep Kang Dongming, who had not reached the metaphysic realm of heaven and earth. It was just like the Sword King City's King Sword and the Sword Soul of Wind and Cloud Sword Tomb. They had too many trump cards. However, in the face of such a simple challenge of swordsmanship, if anyone used such methods to fight the enemy, it would be a disgrace to swordsmanship. Since the death of Sword Saint Gu Qingqing 500 years ago, no one in the Jianghu could live up to the title of Sword Saint. Now, Kang Dongming was called the Sword Saint of the East Sea. Although he added the word East Sea in front of the title, it represented the recognition of many experts in the Jianghu. At this moment, Xiang Chong almost fainted from the surprise. He hurriedly walked up to Kang Dongming and bowed respectfully. "Teacher." He knew what Xiang Long meant. He was looking for someone to rely on and accumulate power for him. Previously, he had been worried that although he was the crown prince, he was too weak. He could not compare to the influence that Xiang Li had built up for more than a decade. However, in the blink of an eye, Xiang Long had helped him solve all of this. No matter how strong Xiang Li's influence was, could it be stronger than Kang Dongming, who had defeated the experts of the three major sword sects and won the title of Sword Saint of the East Sea. Since Xiang Long had decided to support Xiang Chong as the crown prince, with his personality, he had to make sure everything was ready. However, in the face of the crown prince's bow, Kang Dongming only nodded slowly. He did not even say a word, as if he did not understand what this meant. However, Xiang Chong did not care. With such a strong master as a teacher, even if he was only on his side, the deterrence was already shocking enough. After saying so much, Xiang Long seemed to be on the verge of collapse. After saying that the court was dismissed, he left with eunuch Han's help. The others also left with their own thoughts. The news that day was too shocking for them. They needed time to digest it. Chapter 926. In the Jianghu Hall, Mei Qinglian, Pang Hu, Tang Ye, Yan Bugui, and the other higher-ups of the Jianghu Hall were all present. The atmosphere was slightly tense. The things that Xiang Long announced at the morning assembly today were not only targeted at Chu Xiu, but also a strategy formulated for the northern Yan Jianghu and eastern Qi. Balance each other and win in the chaos. However, Chu Xiu's Jianghu Hall was the one that was affected the most. Bringing in Taoism and Buddhism would definitely affect the entire northern Yan Jianghu. No matter how much they tried to restrain themselves, it would be useless. Even Chu Xiu did not believe that he could restrain himself, let alone Taoism and Buddhism. Seeing the tense atmosphere, Tang Ye chuckled. Everyone, there's no need to be so serious, right? Actually, this is a good thing. Xiang Long's actions are equivalent to elevating our master to the level of Taoism and Buddhism. This is an honor. Chu Xiu waved his hand. Tang Ye is right. There's no need to be so serious. Xiang Long did this because he was forced into a corner. That's why he chose to use this move. The first to panic shouldn't be us, but Xiang Long passed down the order. Jianghu Hall does not need to panic. Do what you did in the past. Just be careful of someone making a move in the dark. Then what do we do next? Mei Qinglian asked. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, just deal with the myriad of changes by not changing. Go and find out when the Great Light Temple, the pure Yang Taoist sect, and the Rivers and Mountains Pavilion will enter the city. As half the owner of this place, I'm afraid Xiang Long doesn't have the energy to welcome them. We have to welcome them no matter what. Mei Qinglian nodded. With Chu Xiu's instructions, everything was settled in less than 15 minutes. Just like when Chu Xiu was not around, although everyone did not quarrel, they could not make up their minds and did not know who to listen to. Mei Qinglian had seniority and status. Pang Hu was also on her side, but she could not replace Chu Xiu after all. As for Tang Ye and Yan Bugui, these old subordinates of Chu Xiu, their prestige was not small. It was impossible for them to completely listen to Mei Qinglian's commands. Now that they had Chu Xiu as their backbone, everything would be resolved with just a few words. Several days later, Chu Xiu casually sat on the city tower in front of the eastern city gate of the northern Yan kingdom. The general guarding the city broke out in a cold sweat. Although he also had the title of a general, he was only a city gate guard. He was not even as good as a lieutenant in the 5 armies of the state. He had naturally heard of the name of the governor of Jianghu Hall. It should be said that in the entire northern Yan, there were not many people who had not heard of Chu Xiu. Of course, most of them were infamous. This governor of Jianghu Hall did not supervise the entire Jianghu, but came here to compete with him for work. He stood here and guarded the gate for a long time, which made him feel a lot of pressure. Are you sure that Great Guangming Temple, Chunyang Dao Sect, and Jiangshan Pavilion entered the city from here? Chu Xiu asked Tang Ye. Tang Ye hurriedly said, of course, sir, you can question my strength, but you can't question my ability to do things. I used 3 banquets to get this information from the godson of eunuch Han, the minister of the imperial palace. His Majesty does not have the energy to meet them now, so he arranged for it to be on this day. It must be the East Gate. Chu Xiu's expression was slightly strange. The godson of the eunuch? Isn't that still a eunuch? You invited a eunuch to drink banquets, and you told me that it was done? Tang Ye shrugged and said, no one said that eunuchs can't drink banquets, right? What if he likes it? Although his thing down there is gone, there are many things that can be used on his body, such as... Shut up. Before Tang Ye finished speaking, he was interrupted by Chu Xiu. He was the dignified governor of Jianghu Hall, a famous diabolism tyrant in the Jianghu. Discussing with Tang Ye what a eunuch could do in a brothel, it was disgraceful. At this moment, Chu Xiu's gaze suddenly froze when he saw a group of people walking in from afar. Tang Ye also stopped smiling and became extremely serious. The people from Great Guangming Temple, Chunyang Dao sect, and Jiangshan Pavilion were here. The pure Yang Daoist sect was led by two people this time. One of them was Shi Yunzi, and the other was an old Daoist priest with white hair and a white beard. Chunyang Dao sect's foundation was very strong, even stronger than real martial cult, but no matter how strong the foundation was, it couldn't withstand such consumption. Over the years, many older martial artists of Chunyang Dao sect had fallen. Even Chang Yunzi, the head of the 6 guardian immortals, died in the hands of Chu Xiu. Perhaps even the 6 guardian immortals couldn't be gathered now. Therefore, Ling Yunzi, as the sect leader, naturally couldn't come to Northern Yen Kingdom to set up a branch. Thus, they could only send Shi Yunzi, a senior disciple. But even if Shi Yunzi's seniority was high enough, and he still had Ancestor Lu's divine weapon Chunyang in his hand, he was only at the real pellet state after all, so Ling Yunzi invited this old Taoist. This person's identity was also not ordinary. He was the last person of the Zhen generation in the previous generation of Chunyang Dao sect, Mako Mori. This person didn't live for a long time, but he was the youngest in the previous generation of the Zhen generation. He had already gone behind closed doors for life and death a few decades ago. Originally, Chunyang Dao sect thought that the other party was dead. They were preparing to wait for a few years. When the other party reached the end of his life, they would forcefully open the secret room and bury him. But who would have thought that the other party suddenly came out some time ago? Although he didn't break through to the heaven and earth mystic state, his cultivation had also improved slightly. He had made up for the hidden injuries he had suffered before, and his lifespan had increased a little. Mako Mori looked up at the top of the northern Yen city wall and sighed, "A few decades, a moment of youth. I still remember when I followed senior fellow apprentice to northern Yen, Yanjing city was not so majestic. I didn't expect it to have the appearance of a big city now." Shi Yunzi said on the side, "Martial uncle, don't underestimate northern Yen. A few decades ago, northern Yen was still suppressed by eastern Qi, but not long after you went behind closed doors for life and death, northern Yen had already begun to counterattack eastern Qi. Although it can't be compared with eastern Qi now, it is also one of the 3 major powers in the world. This time, senior fellow apprentice agreed to cooperate with northern Yen because he is interested in the power of northern Yen. In eastern Qi, the true martial sect is the state religion, but in northern Yen, we Dao sects have not taken root here. If we, Chunyang Dao sect, can be the pioneer of Dao sects, we can also find a way out in the future." Shi Yunzi said this because he was afraid that Mako Mori would still look at northern Yen with his old eyes, and he didn't want to offend the northern Yen before he even cooperated with northern Yen. When Mako Mori went into closed-door cultivation, he was not even born yet. However, he heard from Ling Yunzi and a few other elders of Chunyang Dao sect that this martial uncle Mako Mori seemed to have a bad temper. However, when Shou Zhenzi looked at Shi Yunzi, there was a hint of kindness in his eyes. He didn't get angry. He just nodded and said, "Don't worry, I understand." It was true that Mako Mori had a bad temper when he was young, but after decades of closed-door cultivation, no matter how bad his temper was, it had been suppressed by him. Moreover, when Mako Mori looked at Shi Yunzi, it was like he was looking at himself in the past. Back then, he was like Shi Yunzi, the youngest among his peers. His senior apprentice brother was almost as old as his master, but he was also the most favored. But after the vicissitudes of life, his master was gone, and his senior apprentice brother was also gone. The youngest one back then had become the oldest old monster. It was not a good feeling. At this moment, Shi Yunzi pouted and said, "The people from Great Light Temple are here too." Mako Mori took a glance, and the kind smile on his face turned into disdain. This group of monks, it has been decades, but they still haven't changed a bit. They still like to put on a grand show, and they like to show off their face. Compared to the few old Taoists and a dozen young Taoists from Chunyang Dao sect, the Great Light Temple was undoubtedly much more impressive. Su Yen, the master of the Vajra department, one of the 6 major martial courtyards of Great Light Temple, had personally brought people here. He did not bring just one person, but all the disciples of the Vajra department. Su Yen had entered the true fire spiritual refinement realm not long ago, so he was naturally qualified to come to Northern Yen to set up a branch. In fact, in the Great Light Temple, there was another person who was more qualified than Su Yen, and that was Su Du. In terms of status, Su Du was the master of the 3 major Zen halls, so his status was naturally higher than the 6 major martial courtyards. Moreover, when Su Du joined forces with Chu Xiu to kill Yuan Tianfang, he had already shown signs of breaking through. It was just that the martial arts he cultivated was special, and he did not want to walk the ordinary path, so he deliberately suppressed his cultivation. Now, Su Du had actually entered the true fire spiritual refinement realm, but he had not announced it. Instead, he had been in closed-door cultivation in the Great Light Temple, stabilizing his cultivation. Of course, more importantly, with Su Du's unreliable personality, the Great Light Temple was also very suspicious. If they let him set up a branch in Northern Yen, he would make a mess. Therefore, after a discussion among the upper echelons of the Great Light Temple, they were prepared to let Su Yen, the more reliable master, take over. Moreover, Su Yen had specially brought 2 old monks of the Jing generation who had been cultivating in seclusion in the Great Light Temple. They both had the power of the true fire spiritual refinement realm. The Great Light Temple strategy had always been one generation managing the affairs of another, unlike Taoist sects, where the people in charge ranged from old celestial masters who were hundreds of years old to people of the younger generation like Zhang Qingzhen. After the Su generation of the Great Light Temple took over the Great Light Temple, all the martial artists of the Jing generation were almost old. Moreover, the Great Light Temple did not have the habit of taking in disciples on behalf of their masters, so they would not have a junior uncle like Shiyunzi. Therefore, all the martial artists of that generation retired to the Bodhi forest in the back of the mountain, and only came out to teach some disciples when they were free. In fact, the most terrifying thing about the Great Light Temple was not the martial monks of the 3 major Zen halls and the 6 major martial academies, but the old monks who had retired from worldly affairs. Only when the Great Light Temple was truly in a life-and-death crisis would these old monks, who looked extremely old, take action. At that time, it would be the time for the Great Light Temple to show its true power. This time, the Great Light Temple had sent 2 old monks of the Jing generation to guard the Northern Yen branch, which was enough to show the importance they attached to it. Chapter 9:27. The people from the Great Guangming Temple and the Chunyang Dao sect had all arrived. Naturally, the people from Jiangshan Pavilion were here as well. However, there were only a few people from Jiangshan Pavilion. They were here to talk to Xiang Long. After all, Jiangshan Pavilion was going to take over Wei County. Moreover, it was related to Jiangshan Pavilion's plan to restore their country. They had to pay attention to it no matter what. On the horses, 3 people stood side by side. They were all dressed in luxurious clothes and had an extraordinary aura. Looking at the people from the Chunyang Dao sect and the Buddhist sect, a handsome warrior in his 30s said, "Big brother, this time, the Northern Yen Emperor wants to help Jiangshan Pavilion restore our country. It seems that he has made a big move. Even the Chunyang Dao sect and the Great Guangming Temple have been encouraged by him. I wonder what he wants to do." The man whom he called Big Brother looked to be in his 50s. However, the vicissitudes between his brows could not be concealed. He was like an old man who had seen through the world. This man was the current pavilion master of Jiangshan Pavilion, Zhao Yuanfeng. The Zhao family of Jiangshan Pavilion used to be the royal family. Even the core of the entire Jiangshan Pavilion was based on the Zhao family. There were also the descendants of the loyal officials of the Zhao family in the past. Zhao Yuanfeng said in a deep voice, "Yuani, don't worry about the internal affairs of the Northern Yen. You only need to remember one thing. Since the establishment of Jiangshan Pavilion, we have been trying to take back the country that belongs to the Zhao family. The affairs of the Northern Yen Imperial Court and the Northern Yen Jianghu have nothing to do with Jiangshan Pavilion. Now, Jiangshan Pavilion is only here to restore our country. At this time, an old voice behind Zhao Yuanfeng suddenly said, Yuanfeng, it's not that I want to criticize you, but you are wrong. Since Jiangshan Pavilion wants to restore our country, then the current 3 kingdoms will be changed to 4 kingdoms. Whether it is Eastern Qi, Western Chu, or Northern Yen, they are all future enemies of our Jiangshan Pavilion. How can we not pay attention to them? Zhao Yuanfeng frowned slightly and said faintly, Understood, granduncle. Zhao Yuanfeng was a little impatient with the old man behind him, while his younger brother, Zhao Yuanyi, was disgusted. He was a member of the Jiangshan Pavilion Elders Guild. The so-called Elders Council, in Zhao Yuanyi's eyes, was just a place where a bunch of old farts gathered together. They had no ability, but they liked to point fingers at others. Although Jiangshan Pavilion was a descendant of the royal family, it no longer looked like a descendant of the royal family. Instead, it looked more like a combination of a sect and a family in the Jianghu. According to the imperial family's way of doing things, who cared if you were an elder or not? Since you were not the emperor, you should just obediently be a hired thug. Interfering with the imperial family's authority was a great taboo. According to the Jianghu's way of doing things, there were many masters with different surnames in Jiangshan Pavilion. They were all descendants of those loyal officials in the past, so they should be promoted to high positions. However, it was precisely because these old guys said that Jiangshan Pavilion could only be controlled by themselves. How could they hand it over to a servant? Therefore, a large number of masters of Jiangshan Pavilion were bitterly disappointed. They fled overseas or to the Central Plains, parting ways with Jiangshan Pavilion. Fortunately, his elder brother, Zhao Yuanfeng, was outstanding and talented. He had stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm and could be considered to have the qualifications to challenge the Elders Guild. That was why he stood his ground against the objections of the masses and had been developing his overseas forces for the past 10 years. He had occupied many islands and recruited subordinates wantonly, allowing the strength of the Rivers and Mountains Pavilion to rise to another level. However, in Zhao Yuanyi's eyes, his eldest brother was definitely comparable to those in the top 10 on the list. If it wasn't for these old guys holding them back, the development of Jiangshan Pavilion wouldn't just be one level higher. They would probably be able to reach the peak. Zhao Yuanyi wanted to say something, but Zhao Yuanfeng waved his hand and said, All right, that's enough. Let's go into the city. Hearing his eldest brother say that, Zhao Yuanyi followed him into the city, feeling a little depressed. At the city gate, Chu Xiu stood there, waiting for the people from the Great Light Temple and the Chunyang Dao sect to enter the city. Looking at Chu Xiu, who was dressed in black, standing with his hands behind his back, the soldiers guarding the city all shrunk to the side carefully. Su Yan and Shi Yunzi frowned at almost the same time. They knew the benefits of entering the Northern Yen sect to preach, but they also knew the consequences. Yanjing City, the core region of the Northern Yen sect, had always been Chu Xiu's territory. As long as they entered Yanjing City and started interfering with the Jianghu affairs of the entire Northern Yen sect, not only would they have to compete with them, but they would also offend Chu Xiu. Xiang Long was getting someone else to do his dirty work. They understood that, but they still came. It wasn't that they looked down on Chu Xiu, but the conditions and temptation that Xiang Long offered were too great, so great that they couldn't refuse. Master Su Yan, long time no see. Taoist Shi Yunzi, I didn't expect you to come this time. Has the Chunyang Dao sect declined to such an extent? Chu Xiu greeted the two of them with a bright smile on his face. That smile was extremely bright. Chu Xiu stood there like a harmless young master, but Su Yan and Shi Yunzi knew that under that seemingly harmless smile of Chu Xiu's, there was actually a lot of blood and slaughter hidden within. Shi Yunzi let out a long sigh and said in a deep voice, I'm just an ordinary disciple of the Chunyang Dao sect. I've never thought of myself as special. Since the sect asked me to do so, Of course I had to do it. What's so strange about that? The disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect who came with Shiyunzi all looked at him with surprise. In the Chunyang Dao sect, this little uncle master was not well liked. Most of the disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect thought that he was pompous and did not act like a Taoist master at all. However, when it came to business, Shiyunzi behaved himself. At least, he would not embarrass the Chunyang Dao sect. Su Yan shook his head and said, "Official Chu, you should know why we're here in Yanjing City. We also know why you're here. Official Chu, you're a smart man. You should know that the main reason for this isn't us. The Great Light Temple has no intention of becoming enemies with you at this time. However, we can't help ourselves in the Jianghu. I hope you can understand." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "We can't help ourselves in the Jianghu." Well said. Master Su Yan can see it very clearly. Chu Xiu's expression turned grave as soon as he said that. However, I, Chu Xiu, am also a person in the Jianghu. Can I help myself in the things I do? The Zhenwu clan has been operating in the northern Jianghu for many years. The order has been completely established. Now that the two of you have come, you want to destroy this order. I can tolerate it, but the entire Zhenwu clan can't. Su Yan put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. Official Chu, I can only guarantee that the Great Light Temple won't start a war easily. Shiyunzi, who was at the side, also said, Senior Brother Sect leader has already said that the karma between the two sides will be put aside for the time being. This time, the Chunyang Dao sect didn't come specifically to become enemies with you, Official Chu. Mako Mori was sizing up Chu Xiu at the moment. Back when he was in closed-door cultivation, there was no such person as Chu Xiu in the Jianghu. Not to mention Chu Xiu, even Qinqing Di had not shown any signs at that time. In the end, the world had changed in just a few decades. Now, such a junior martial artist actually had the ability to stir up the world? Just as the atmosphere between the two sides was very tense, the people from Jiangshan Pavilion walked over. Actually, Zhao Yuanfeng did not want to have any dealings with Chu Xiu. Of course, Zhao Yuanfeng knew about the Zhenwu clan's viceroy, who had recently become famous in the Jianghu. In fact, he knew him in detail. After all, there were not many people in the entire Jianghu who did not know Chu Xiu. Jiangshan Pavilion only focused on the overseas region. It was not that they did not pay attention to the Central Plains warriors' movements. However, this time, although Jiangshan Pavilion had joined the overall situation, Jiangshan Pavilion's target was only Wei County. As long as they could manage Wei County well, they did not care about what the northern Yan would be like. Therefore, when he saw Chu Xiu and the others secretly quarreling at the city gate, he wanted to keep a low profile and go around the small door at the side. However, the Zhao clan's elder frowned and rushed to say, "Everyone, don't block the gate if you don't want to go in." As soon as he said this, Zhao Yuanfeng secretly cursed. As expected, the gazes of the three parties turned to the direction of Jiangshan Pavilion at the same time. "People from Jiangshan Pavilion?" Chu Xiu said faintly. The Zhao clan's elder said proudly, "Yes. To be precise, we are the Zhao clan's royal family. After I meet your majesty, it will not take long for us to restore our country. If you want to resolve the grievances between you and the Taoists and Buddhists, go somewhere else. Don't block the way here." When this elder of the Zhao family was born, the Zhao family had not yet been destroyed. Therefore, he was still contaminated with some of the habits of the royal family. He was not like Zhao Yuanfeng and the others, who were almost no different from the people of the Jianghu. They did things purely with the eyes of the people of the Jianghu. Previously, Zhao Yuanfeng had told the Zhao clan's elder not to offend Xianglong. Of course, the elder knew this. Even if Zhao Yuanfeng didn't say it, he would still pay attention. The royal family's etiquette could not be forgotten. However, Zhao Yuanfeng forgot to tell him not only not to offend Xianglong, but also not to offend important officials like Chu Xiu who had great influence in northern Yan. In the past, when the Zhao clan was still a royal family, it could be said that their words carried enormous weight. In reality, small countries like the Zhao clan's royal family could not have too much influence in the country. Therefore, in the eyes of the Zhao clan's elder, This Chu Xiu was only a northern Yan official, while his Jiangshan pavilion's Zhao clan was of royal origin. They were qualified to be on equal footing with the Xiang clan's royal family. Of course, not in terms of strength, at least in terms of status. Facing a northern Yan official, the Zhao clan's elder thought that his attitude was polite enough. In fact, he was even giving face to Xiang Long. Chu Xiu looked at the people of the River Mountain Pavilion, and his lips suddenly curled into a cold smile. Block the way? How dare a group of impoverished people, whose country had almost been destroyed by others, clamor here? Yanjing City is not a place where you can put on airs. Even if His Majesty summons you, if I don't want to let you in, who would dare to open the door? Hearing this, the Zhao clan's elder flew into a rage. How dare you? How dare you? Does the Northern Yan Imperial Court have any rules? Rules? When His Majesty is here, his words are the rules. When His Majesty is not here, my words are the rules. As soon as he finished speaking, the aura around Chu Xiu's body shot up to the sky and he directly punched at the Zhao clan's elder. Su Yan and Shi Yunzi were very experienced and hid at the side. Chu Xiu was a madman. Before this, they did not want to provoke Chu Xiu at this time. Since someone was willing to help Chu Xiu vent his anger, they were more than happy to help. Chapter 9:28. There were many people in this world who felt good about themselves, and the elder of Jiangshan Pavilion was one of them. Although he had heard of Chu Xiu's reputation, his view was completely different from that of Zhao Yuanfeng. In Zhao Yuanfeng's view, Chu Xiu was the heir of the Yinma clan. Even the northern Yanjin Wuhao had a faint tendency to be independent. The other party was definitely not to be trifled with. However, in the eyes of the elder of the Zhao family, the other party was also a minister of the northern Yan. How could the words ruler and minister be taken lightly? He had never thought that Chu Xiu would actually attack him right in front of him. Chu Xiu had no scruples at all, and had even said that Xiang Long's absence meant that his words were the rules. Feeling the pressure in the punch, the elder of the Zhao family suddenly felt a chill in his heart. He was also a warrior in the True Fire Spiritual Refinement realm, and it had been a long time since he entered the True Fire Spiritual Refinement realm. In the past, when the Zhao family was chased by the enemy country like a stray dog, it was the former experts of the royal family who protected the last trace of the Zhao family's bloodline to escape to the East Sea. The elder of the Zhao family was one of those people. During the pursuit, there were all kinds of strong pressures on the body. As long as one could survive, there was almost no weak person. However, after he entered the Elders Guild, he lived like a prince and had not fought with anyone for a long time. At this time, Chu Xiu's punch gave the elder of the Zhao family a feeling. It was the same feeling of despair that he had when he was facing the endless pursuit in the past. The elder of the Zhao clan roared furiously, and light blue gang qi condensed around his body. Then he slammed his palm down, and the powerful palm force surged like the waves of the vast sea, making deafening sonic booms. However, Chu Xiu's punch contained extreme strength. His body that was tempered by the inner force and true fire was indestructible. In addition, Chu Xiu also used the Black Tortoise True skill as the fist intent of the Mountain and Sea Fist scripture. This punch even had the power to shatter mountains. Seeing his own palm power collapse under Chu Xiu's punch, the Zhao family elder's expression changed greatly. If the young man in front of him took out some amazing martial skill, he would still have the confidence to block it. However, this pure suppression of power caused him to feel powerless. All kinds of mystical arts and secret techniques had their weaknesses. Only extreme power had no weaknesses. Right at this moment, Zhao Yuanfeng suddenly made a move. He also struck out with his palm, but in an instant he condensed the water vapor within a radius of several thousand feet. The water droplets froze in midair, blocking the path of Chu Xiu's fist. The seemingly weak water droplets contained the power of heaven and earth. When Chu Xiu's power hit the water droplets, it was strangely absorbed. Although most of the water droplets could not withstand this power and completely turned into water mist, they still blocked the power of Chu Xiu's punch. Chu Xiu glanced at Zhao Yuanfeng and said indifferently, "Water has no fixed shape. Hard and soft? The pavilion master of Jiangshan Pavilion is indeed extraordinary. It's just that the people below are too insensible. As the pavilion master, you didn't even say anything, but the others are barking like dogs here. Don't they have any respect for their superiors?" Hearing Chu Xiu say that he was barking like a dog, the Zhao family's elder's face immediately turned red. He was angry. However, before he could say anything, Zhao Yuanfeng had already stopped him and said in a deep voice, "Official Chu, Jiangshan Pavilion, have lived in the coastal border for a long time. I don't know much about the Central Plains warriors. I made a fool of myself and offended you, Official Chu. Please forgive me, Official Chu." His elder had caused trouble, and the one who came to clean up after him was Zhao Yuanfeng. He knew Chu Xiu's position in the northern Yen. Although he should not have any conflict or enmity with Chu Xiu, if his elder offended Chu Xiu, it would really be an undeserved disaster. Of course, Zhao Yuanfeng would not be too weak. He glanced at the Taoist and Buddhist sects and said, "Official Chu, Jiangshan Pavilion, have come here only to meet the Emperor of the Northern Yen. After that, I will immediately go to Wei Prefecture. From then on, I will no longer participate in the various disputes of the Northern Yen Court or the Jianghu. Right now, the first problem that Official Chu wants to solve is not us. In fact, it will not be us in the future. On the contrary, we may have the possibility of cooperation in the future." Chu Xiu cast a deep glance at Zhao Yuanfeng. This pavilion master of the Rivers and Mountains Pavilion did not have a prominent reputation in the martial arts world of the Central Plains. However, based on the move he had just made and the words he had said, Chu Xiu was able to determine that this person was a character. Don't think that the overseas region was easier to live than the Central Plains warriors. Wherever there were people, there would be Jianghu. Since it was Jianghu, there would be no lack of killings and disputes. The Central Plains was a vast land with abundant resources. If they could not win, they could still escape. If they managed to escape, they could just find a place to recuperate. After all, revenge was a dish best served cold. However, in the overseas region, outside the islands was the vast sea. Losing would basically mean death. The fact that Jiangshan Pavilion could occupy a few islands in such a cruel place like the open sea was enough to show Zhao Yuanfeng's means and strength. Right at this moment, Xiang Chong heard some news from somewhere and hurried over. Although Xiang Long's purpose of bringing the Taoist, demon, and Buddhist lineages here was to suppress Chu Xiu, it was not right for them to fight at the city gate on the first day they met. Therefore, he rushed over in time to stop them. Xiang Chong even brought the 9-dragon seal. He was afraid that Chu Xiu would go crazy and turn against him with Shang Tianliang. Of course, Xiang Chong was different. With Shang Tianliang's level of battle prowess, Chu Xiu would not use it unless he was forced to reveal his dagger. Although he was crazy, he had to obtain something after going crazy. Otherwise, he would not go crazy for nothing. Although the atmosphere was tense, it seemed like there was no real fight. Xiang Chong heaved a sigh of relief and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, His Majesty is waiting for you. Follow me into the city." After saying that, Xiang Chong looked deeply at Chu Xiu and said calmly, "Official Chu, His Majesty is waiting for them. Can we talk about this later?" Chu Xiu smiled and said, "North Garrison King, you worry too much. I'm just here to welcome an old friend. Is that not enough?" Xiang Chong snorted and said, "I hope so." After the people from the Taoist and Buddhist sects and the River Mountain Pavilion left, Tanya said, "The River Mountain Pavilion has a great reputation in the overseas region. Now that I look at it, it seems that they are ignorant and stupid." Chu Xiu said calmly, "If everyone in the world is smart, then there is no way to survive. This is very normal. Some people have lived for hundreds of years and still do not understand. This has nothing to do with age. Don't laugh at others. There are many old people like this in the Inma clan." Tanya nodded. That seemed to be the case. Tanya did not forget how the 3 big shots of the Inma clan had come to denounce them. They had gone too far. The probing at the city gate had made Chu Xiu understand. Although Xiang Long was old and on the verge of death, he was a hero who had led the rise of Northern Yen. He was not an easy person to deal with. He had used the tactics of combining the vertical and the horizontal, driving the tiger to swallow the wolf, and so on. For an emperor, he did not have to know how to govern the country. There were plenty of civil officials who would help him govern. He also did not have to know how to fight a war. The generals of the 5 armies were more familiar with these things than him. However, as an emperor, he could not lack the ability to see the big picture. It was obvious that neither the Great Light Temple nor the Chunyang Dao sect could refuse Xiang Long's conditions. Even if they knew that this would anger Chu Xiu, even if they knew that Xiang Long was using someone else to kill him, they would still do it. This was because the price of using someone else was so high that they could not refuse. Just as Chu Xiu was about to go back and think of a plan, a person dressed like a butler walked in front of Chu Xiu and bowed. "Official Chu, His Highness invites you." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. "Your Highness?" The person said, "Of course, His Highness the Crown Prince." "Xiang Chong is looking for me?" The person dressed like a butler looked a little unhappy. He paused and said, "Sir, please be careful. His Highness is now the Crown Prince. It is not good for you to call him by his name." Chu Xiu could fall out with the Zhao clan elder, who was also in the true fire spiritual refinement realm but could not see him clearly because of words. However, he would not lower himself to the level of a servant because it would lower his status. Right now, he was only thinking about why Xiang Chong was looking for him. Xiang Chong had interacted with Chu Xiu before, but their relationship was not very deep. Previously, when Xiang Long had suppressed Chu Xiu had wanted to get Xiang Chong's help. However, after testing him, Xiang Chong had rejected him. From then on, Chu Xiu could tell what Xiang Chong's stance was. Since then, the two of them had no contact. Now that Xiang Chong had become the crown prince, could he still want to recruit him? As he thought about this, Chu Xiu said to the servant, "Lead the way." The servant brought Chu Xiu to the crown prince's palace. All these years, the crown prince's palace had been empty. Although it had been cleaned up, it was still messy and not suitable for living. However, Xiang Chong seemed to be afraid that he would lose his position. He could not wait to move into the crown prince's palace, regardless of whether this place was suitable for living. Chu Xiu waited in the simple and crude guest hall for a quarter of an hour before Xiang Chong came over. With a smile on his face, he said, "Sir Chu, I have neglected you. Please forgive me for not coming out to meet you." Glancing at Xiang Chong, Chu Xiu could almost see through Xiang Chong's inner thoughts with his eyesight. He was pleased and arrogant, but he tried his best to hide it. He did not want others to see it. Even his tone when speaking to Chu Xiu was different from before. It had become a little arrogant. Although Xiang Chong was a prince in the past, he still had to be courteous to a young talent like Chu Xiu who had a great reputation in the pugilistic world. Later, when Chu Xiu became the viceroy of the Jianghu Hall, Xiang Chong did not even have the qualifications to recruit him. He could only express goodwill. But now, he, Xiang Chong, has become the crown prince. In a few days, he will become the emperor of Northern Yen, but you, Chu Xiu, are being suppressed by imperial father both openly and secretly. Chu Xiu, have you ever regretted not submitting to me? Chapter 929. Chu Xiu did not say much about Xiang Chong's arrogant attitude after gaining the upper hand. It was normal for a young man to have little experience. He would get used to it after a few ups and downs. Therefore, Chu Xiu just said lightly, "I wonder why your highness is looking for me?" Xiang Chong sat boldly on Chu Xiu's seat of honor. He did not look as courteous and cautious as he did before. He waved his hand and said, "Official Chu, there is no need to resort to insinuations. Now that both Taoism and Buddhism have entered the city, I'm afraid the days of Jianghu Hall will not be easy. I have known you for many years, Official Chu. Naturally, I want to help you, but this is my father's decision, and I can't do anything about it. But Official Chu, rest assured, as long as you are willing to assist me and temporarily break up Jianghu Hall and merge it into the Crown Prince's palace, when I inherit the throne, I will naturally find a way to help you rebuild Jianghu Hall. And I believe it will not take too long. Official Chu, I remember many years ago, when you were still on the Longhu list and had not become famous in Jianghu, I wanted to recruit you, Official Chu, but Official Chu, you refused. Now, Official Chu, you have become famous in Jianghu, but I have also become the heir of great yen from a prince who has no power. I wonder if I am qualified to recruit you, Official Chu? When Xiang Chong said this, his heart was full of joy. Before he became the crown prince, Chu Xiu actually felt that Xiang Chong was not bad. Because of Xiang Li's suppression, the prince did not have much of the arrogant temperament of the royal family. Instead, he had a little more of the generosity of Jianghu. At that time, Xiang Chong yearned for Jianghu. In the northern Yan, he was suppressed by Xiang Li and could not see any hope. For him, he wished he could be a Jianghu ranger instead of being born in an imperial family. Every day, he was on tenterhooks and could not see freedom and hope. Yet now, a single sentence from Xiang Long had allowed him to completely turn the tables on Xiang Chong and become the inheritor and controller of this enormous empire. This enormous gap was sufficient to cause Xiang Chong's entire mentality to change, and this sort of change was something that even Xiang Long hadn't expected. In Xiang Long's plan, Xiang Chong only needed to watch the three forces of Taoism, Buddhism, and Diabolism suffer a great loss, and then restore Jiangshan Pavilion to become a barrier against Eastern Qi. Then he would inherit the throne. That would be enough. Who would have thought that Xiang Chong would be so arrogant and come to recruit Chu Xiu, and even make such a promise? In his heart, Xiang Chong, Xiang Xiu, Xiang Chong and Xiang Xiu and Li, Xiang and Xiang, Xiang and Xiu, Xiang, Xiang, Xiang and Lina. As for Chu Xiu, he could not be considered hateful. However, when he had been rejected by Chu Xiu when he tried to recruit him, it was like a thorn in his heart. That scene made him feel that Chu Xiu looked down on him. Now that he had become the crown prince, Chu Xiu was facing danger from all sides. Would Chu Xiu reject his invitation? Do you dare to refuse? Looking at Chu Xiu below, a smile appeared on Xiang Chong's face. It was a smile that he had learned from his father, Xiang Long, as if he had a card up his sleeve. However, when placed on Xiang Chong's face, it seemed a little awkward. Chu Xiu didn't get angry. He just said lightly, "Your Highness, did you sleep too much because you were suddenly announced as the crown prince a few days ago? This is not a good thing. The Northern Yan Empire will need your Highness to shoulder it in the future. You must pay attention to your health." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, the smile on Xiang Chong's face froze. He knew what Chu Xiu meant. Chu Xiu was saying that he was daydreaming. Xiang Chong jumped to his feet with a gloomy expression. However, he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Although he had indeed been overly excited by the news of the crown prince, it didn't mean that he had become stupid from the shock. Even if he didn't know what his father had done at the time, the elders of the Xiang royal family had told him about it later on. Chu Xiu's forces were already so fearful that even Xiang Long did not dare to fall out with him, to the point where the Taoist and Buddhist lineages had to join forces to suppress him. Of course, he did not have the qualifications to fall out with Chu Xiu. Otherwise, he would be the one to be embarrassed. Therefore, Xiang Chong forcibly suppressed the anger in his heart and laughed loudly. Good, good, good. Official Chu is indeed Official Chu. He is exactly the same as the Official Chu from years ago. He hasn't changed at all. However, Official Chu hasn't changed, but I am no longer the same as I was a few years ago. A few years ago, it took a lot of effort for me to ask a real pellet state martial arts Grand Master to be a guest. Now, there is already the top sword sage in the world to be my teacher. There is even a powerhouse of true fire spirit refinement state who took the initiative to join me. I heard that this person is an old friend of Official Chu. Let's meet him today. Senior Li, please come out. As Xiang Chong's voice fell, a figure walked out of the inner hall. It was none other than Li Jiaodi, who escaped from Chu Xiu last time. Seeing Li Jiaodi again, Chu Xiu was taken aback. This woman provoked me again and again, and now she even dares to appear in front of me. Is she really not afraid of death, or does she have something to rely on? Chu Xiu's gaze instantly darkened. Li Jiaodi, I let you escape last time and I can't be bothered to continue chasing after you. You should be thankful for that. Now, you still dare to appear in northern Yen. Who gave you the courage? Who gave you the courage? Who? In the last battle in the Mahakala demon cult, Li Jiaodi was really scared by Chu Xiu. That kind of crushing power made her feel a sense of powerlessness. In the end, she had to use a secret technique to escape with her life, and she even almost suffered from chi deviation. If she hadn't been saved by someone and coincidentally solved her heart demon, her cultivation might have been crippled. So at this time, when Li Jiaodi faced Chu Xiu, although she still had the courage before, her face couldn't help but turn pale when she heard Chu Xiu shout. Meanwhile, Xiang Chong said, Lord Chu, Senior Li is a revered elder of my crown prince's palace now. I didn't care about the enmity between the two of you in the past, but if you attack Senior Li now, then you're looking down on me. Teacher. As Xiang Chong shouted, Kong Dongming, the sword sage of the East Sea, appeared behind him. He was still holding his sword, looking sluggish. He didn't want to kill Chu Xiu, not even hostile. But Chu Xiu was sure that if he attacked here, the sword sage of the East Sea would definitely attack. Chu Xiu looked at Xiang Chong and narrowed his eyes. People who had followed Chu Xiu for a long time knew that when Chu Xiu showed this kind of expression, it usually meant that he was about to plot or kill someone. People who narrowed their eyes were generally very scary. Very good. It seems that your highness has a card up your sleeve. But I still have to advise your highness, some people can't be used. Those who harm their master will be very miserable after using them. After saying this, Chu Xiu turned around and left. With Kong Dongming around, Chu Xiu couldn't kill Li Jiaodi. Kong Dongming's title as the Sword Sage of the East Sea was not just for show. He had earned it through fighting. Shen Baochen of the Sword Hut and Shen Tianwang of the Sword King City had been defeated by him. One could imagine how strong his swordsmanship was. Although he couldn't compare to the sword sage Gu Qingqing of 500 years ago, at least in the current martial arts world, there were not many people who could beat him in swordsmanship. For a person like Kong Dongming, besides swordsmanship, there was nothing else that could be stuffed into his head in this life. Only God knew what conditions Xiang Long had offered him that he could stay safely in northern Yen and stay by Xiang Chong's side as a teacher. However, if Chu Xiu wanted to kill someone, not even Gu Qingqing, the sword saint of the Eastern Sea, could stop him. Not even Gu Qingqing, the sword saint from 500 years ago, could stop him. But at this time in the Crown Prince's palace, Xiang Chong didn't care about Chu Xiu's threat at all. He just thought that Chu Xiu wanted to save some face. Xiang Chong said to Li Jiaodi, Senior Li, please rest assured. As long as you can assist me, Chu Xiu can't touch you. Li Jiaodi nodded stiffly. She was a standard Jianghu person. Even if she joined the Yinma clan, she was only doing things alone. She was still a little unused to this kind of etiquette. But at this moment, a handsome young man in white with a jade-like face walked out from the side and put his arm around Li Jiaodi's waist in an extremely natural manner. He smiled at Xiang Chong and said, Your Highness, don't worry. Now that you are the chosen one, we will definitely stand by your side. After returning to the Jianghu Hall, Chu Xiu first called Mei Qinglian over and told her what happened today. He asked, How did Li Jiaodi get involved with Xiang Chong? Mei Qinglian was also stunned. She knew Li Jiaodi. Perhaps it was the same sex repels each other. She had only interacted with Li Jiaodi a few times, but she also looked down on her. When she heard that Li Jiaodi had actually joined Xiang Chong's side, she immediately asked someone to investigate. The Jianghu Hall today was not the Jianghu Hall of the past. Many people joined later. Although it was not as good as the wind-sweeping building in terms of intelligence, at least it was still very useful around Yanjing City. After a while, Mei Qinglian received the information from the servants in the Crown Prince's palace. Mei Qinglian said with a strange expression, Li Jiaodi joined Xiang Chong because of her man. Chu Xiu was stunned when he heard this. Li Jiaodi has a man? Although Li Jiaodi seemed to still be attractive, it seemed that she was not young anymore. Mei Qinglian nodded and said, Do you still remember Li Jiaodi's background? She was once abandoned by a man when she was young, so she almost didn't have a good attitude towards men. But after she was seriously injured by you last time, she met the descendant of the man who injured her, who was also Xiang Chong's guest, Lin Fengyu. His appearance was almost exactly the same as his ancestor. It was Lin Fengyu who saved Li Jiaodi. Because of his appearance, Li Jiaodi got rid of the demon in her heart and fell in love with him. Lin Fengyu even promised her that he would repay the love debt owed by his ancestor. From then on, Li Jiaodi listened to Lin Fengyu. She naturally came to join Xiang Chong because of Lin Fengyu. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.